the back? Okay. Good morning, everyone. We apologize for the delay. We're having a little technical difficulty, so thank you for your patience. Today is Wednesday, July 17th, 2024, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9:16 a.m. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed, and you can join us online by going to our website or to tctvonline.com. Click on Live Broadcasts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute your phones. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Public comment. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to the public comments email on our website. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email public comments by 12 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners office at 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon, 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Do we have anyone signed up in the room or registered online for public comment? No. Thank you. Then we will call this meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Olson, will you lead us, please?
Yes, I will.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to invite Kate Skinner up to the front. Kate is the Tillamook District Forester for the Oregon Department of Forestry, and she's joining us today to give us an Oregon Department of Forestry fiscal year 25 operation plan highlights. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
So I wanted to start out with a couple of things before I jump into my presentation to just talk about. One was, again, thank you to all of you for the Title III funds, for the debris vouchers, and July 1st we were up and running and back with the transfer station, so we really appreciate that. And also I wanted to just touch on fire season a little bit. We are up and running, I guess, to say the least. As of yesterday, we had 4 large fires in the state and about 336 fire starts across the state.
Wow.
All human cause from what we've been able to tell, and about 29,000 acres of ODF protected land in that fire statistic. Last night, we had a lightning storm started in Medford yesterday afternoon and worked its way up through the Cascades and along the coast as well. So we're seeing additional fire starts this morning across the state. And so today we'll see how that plays out a little bit. And so just for some perspective, from the Northwest Oregon area, we've deployed 78 employees and all across all those fires, and especially the 2 fire team dispatches. So we have our incident management team 1 is on the Salt Creek fire, and they will be coming home today and tomorrow. And so that one will be turned back to the district. And then the Larch Creek fire that's over in the Dufur area has our incident management team 2. And so making progress on both of those, but it's, as we keep saying, fire season's a marathon and not a sprint. So. All right, so with that, I think it just kind of comes back to the debris vouchers. Folks here are doing a great job. Tillamook County, we're having very little activity, and I appreciate everybody's efforts on that and across the community and across the state here. All right, I'll jump into the annual operations plan.
So before you jump into that, the thing you just said that's stuck in my mind like a thorn is we have 336 human-caused fires in the state right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, since the beginning of fire season.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that a common number? I mean, I know a lot of fires are caused by humans, but is that number common?
We've been seeing an increase in the last couple years, and you'll see Keep Oregon Green is doing really a lot of education around that piece of it. And a majority of our fires are human-caused throughout Oregon.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't hear very often about people being prosecuted for starting fires. Is that common?
So we go to a cost collection piece as much as anything, and it might be a farmer that's out plowing some fields with equipment. It might be somebody with a tow chain along highway that would catch something on fire. So some of them are just hard to pinpoint to an individual. I know last week down in the Toledo area, they had 5 fire starts, and it was exactly malfunction of a tow chain along the highway. And so, so it's a whole variety, backyard burning, whatever it might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Madam, could I ask a question
Yeah.
while we're on that subject, please? What type of aerial assets are brought into this when you have that many fires spread out all over the state? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a bunch. So part of it is we're in partnership with our federal partners, of course. They are carrying the contracts for large air tankers and those kind of resources. We have what are called single engine air tankers, which are scooper planes. You see a lot of those, as well as I think some of these fires have as many as a dozen helicopters on them right now, of either buckets or tanks on those. So right now, in Oregon, there's and we pull, I guess I'd say too, from Washington DNR if they're available, as well as some private companies who are protecting their own lands come in with aviation
How do they get their
resources.
water? I'm just curious, do they fly low over lakes, or do they have to land and then refill from a tanker? How does that work?
Yeah, so a lot of them are like scooper planes. You'll see video coming in and out of Hag Lake, and they just fly along the water and scoop. There's a lot of bucket drops, so they're able to just scoop out of even small lakes and ponds and that kind of thing. In the past, there has been where you land with single engine air tankers and refill with, it's kind of a slurry of water and gel that they've been using over the years. So the large air tankers, of course, they have to land and reload.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's move to the mundane. So we can go to the next slide, Debbie. I was going to be here last month, and you guys had a really busy agenda, so we got bumped. So I came to talk about the State Forest Annual Operations Planning process, and we just signed our fiscal year 25 plans, but I wanted to just jump back a little bit for a reminder of kind of how our planning processes work on the state forest. So we have an overarching forest management plan, really high-level goals and strategies. At this time, we have a draft habitat conservation plan we're starting to implement and starting to get alignment with our on-the-ground work. And then under that is our implementation plans, which they're sub-geographic. At this time, they're done by district. We may change that to more of a Northwest or Willamette Valley planning process. And those are kind of our mid-level 10-year plans. They've been a little bit shorter lately as we transition, but those are really looking at longer term. What are you going to achieve over 10 years for harvest and implementation of in-stream projects and those kind of pieces. And then the annual operations plan or operations plan is really the project level detail. Where are you going to build roads? Where are you going to harvest timber? Where are you going to expand campgrounds? Those kind of things. So that's what we're here to talk about, is the bottom piece of the operations plan. Our operations plans, if you look at the documents, they really focus on timber sale, roads management, reforestation, and recreation, education, interpretation. And the plans, of course, are aligned with our budgets. But we also, there's a lot more in the annual operations plan for watershed and stream enhancement, T&E surveys for murrelets and owls, and our administrative work for miscellaneous forest products, special use permits, and those kind of things we do across the forest. And we also go through a public comment period for the operations plans. So this year was April 3rd to May 17th. We gather information from the public online. They can send us letters. Some folks came to the Board of Forestry meetings this year or to local offices to give us their input. And that input might be everything from harvest more, harvest less. Hay, I found on a map that you got the stream wrong. So there's a variety pack of what we receive. And we walk through all of that and try to make corrections, or we try to reach out to folks if there's more information we need to gather, as well as just put together a response to those public comments as we receive them. And that's a huge lift by our planning team right now. Okay, so fiscal year '25. So we have, can we go to the next slide, Deb? No, it's okay. Thank you. Okay, back up one. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So July 1st to June 30th is our fiscal year. So our planned timber sales, so the Tillamook district, we're looking at 51.9 million board feet of volume, and Forest Grove is 13.1, with a net value of 17.9 million. And so that is before we have bid up from our timber sale auctions, so we expect to have more in revenue. And then reforestation, young stem management across the two districts, will be planting over 1 million seedlings on 1,800 acres of Douglas fir, western hemlock, and cedar. And also we'll be doing pre-commercial thinning as part of our young stem management. And this year we're going to be utilizing some grant funding for that. And then also a big effort we do is around invasive species treatment. So it might be Scotch broom, knotweed, and that might be in plantations, it might be roadside. We do get a lot of invasives that come in on folks' tires if they've been someplace else and then come to the forest, or they track it around. So we try to stay on top of that as much as we can. And then also continued road maintenance. So this year we have planned improvement to 165 miles. And when I say improvement, that might be installing culverts, it might be resurfacing rock, we might be doing roadside brushing, those kind of things. But also this year we're going to be focusing on Cook Creek. So starting the end of July and into August, we're going to repair Cook Creek Road, which I know many from the community have been interested in. It's been closed since December 2015 storm. And so we have a contractor in place, and we're going to get that started, but it will require us to close some of the campsites up there late summer as well as into hunting season. And I know it's a very popular area for the hunting season. And that's just to keep the area safe for our workers, but also for the public as we get into that construction project. And we're going to try to put out some more information as we get more detailed timelines as far as the road closure and other access routes that the public can use there.
Can I ask you some questions before we move
Absolutely.
off? Thank you. So invasive species treatment, I don't think I've heard you say before that you treat knotweed, and I'm very interested in that because it's clear just anecdotally driving around the county that it's spreading. It's just getting worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about that? Like, how successful is it? How do you do it? Presumably you do it along waterways.
No. Some of those places, I think we've all looked at, like the Nehalem, some of the parts of the Trask.
Horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's like kudzu.
It's kind of a lost cause to try to fight it there, as well as being in riparian aquatic areas. It's really difficult to treat there. We are really focusing on areas that we're trying to keep it out of the uplands, we find it a lot on roadsides where people have tracked it in. We find it in plantations where it's starting to get, and so we're trying to stay on top of that as quickly as we can. Sometimes there's debris waste areas that also it'll pop up. And so those have been our main focuses, not necessarily in the riparian areas.
Okay. I had it in my head that it mainly spread along waterways.
Yeah, that's with the flood events, that's where it gets picked up and moved the most. So we just get a lot of it coming in. So part of our equipment with contractors as they come onto the forest, they have to have everything washed and cleaned before they come onto the forest. But with the recreation public and just tire treads in general, we'll get a lot of it that way.
Okay, thank you. And
absolutely.
my other question is, where is Cook Creek Road?
Cook Creek Road is up off of Foss Road and then Nehalem.
Okay.
And it's a main route that goes up into the system there. And like I said, it's been closed since 2015. It was a major washout, and so we are rerouting into the rock bluffs above. It's going to be quite the engineering project to accomplish, but it's also one of our main haul routes for future timber sales. And like I said, we haven't really hauled out of there since 2015, so it's going to be a lot of access there, as well as we've had recreation sites up there, dispersed camping that are really popular, and so that's part of our other motivation to get it open.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So the other big work we do is around recreation and interpretation. So we're really focused on the operation and maintenance of our campgrounds, day use areas, trailheads, boat launches, all those kind of pieces. We're not really doing any expansion or new sites as much as we're trying to just keep in the maintenance mode of what we do have, making improvements. So Jones Creek Campground, we're making improvements for our camp hosts there, making better sites, water, communications, those kind of things. And then we're also have been doing a big effort around improvement and reroutes or construction of motorized trails, improve the connections and rider experience, as well as safety and resource protections. And so there's been a big effort around the Trask riding area in particular of getting bridges put in, improvements there, so they're up out of the water. And as well as we're hosting 12 to 14 OHV events, either between Browns Camp, Diamond Mill, Hollywood Camp for riding. And then in addition to all that, we're doing density and operational surveys for northern spotted owls and marbled murrelets. Those are all 2 years ahead of time of any operations, so we have complete protocol surveys. We're doing survey of streams and for duration, perennial or seasonal, and fish presence. There's been a big change with the Forest Practices Act that we have to comply with, as well as workflows with Fish and Wildlife for their reviews on those, and so we're implementing all of that as well. And then looking for stream and habitat improvement projects that either we'll do with the timber sales or we'll do in partnerships with the watershed councils, as those are opportunities for us. And as I talked about earlier, selling our miscellaneous forest products, wood cutting, issuing special use permits, all that. Okay, so I wanted to take just a slide here to talk about fiscal year 24 and looking back a little bit. So as we wrapped up fiscal year 24, we had planned on 49 million board feet in Tillamook and 18 million board feet of volume for our timber sales, and we actually overachieved that, especially in the Forest Grove side. So we're looking at 73 million board feet that was prepared as part of the fiscal year 24. We've so that's a total of 12 timber sales, and I had on there 8 sold, but we sold 2 yesterday, so 10 of those are already sold. And then with our sold and active operations, you can see there's 25 sales between the 2 districts within Tillamook County, 133 million board feet. Of those, about 32 million has been hauled to date, which is a reflection. We have 3-year contracts. So when you sell, do some road building and then hauling the timber. So that's why there's a 3-year contract. But the 2 sales we sold this week were another 12 million board feet coming in. So just a reflection too of the wood in the pipeline continuously there. As we finish up, we continue to sell more. And then of course, right now we're in the full swing of summer recreation season. All of our campgrounds are open and operating. We talked about the Trask Basin. They're doing some mapping, bridge installations, and the Tillamook Forest Center is back open 5 days a week. So it's a significant amount of work too. I put in there is completed over in the Santiam State Forest, and those are the same staff that's working across a lot of the planning work for recreation as here, as well as over in the Santiam, and so that has taken a tremendous amount of time, and part of why we're kind of in a maintenance and operation mode here. So, all right, I think that's it. So next steps, so we have finished up the public comment. I have signed this AOP, and we've gotten it started. So the next piece for us actually is in September. We have a date on the calendar for a field tour with all of you out on the state forest. So we'll get into more detail about what you'd like to see out there and see if we can flesh out a good time with you. So with that, any other questions or?
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Commissioners?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So, first, a couple of comments, just for the FMP and IP that Kate referred to that are in draft form right now, the FTLAC, or Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee, I always forget if we're a committee or a council, but are working with the Department of Forestry as they work through the goals for that and then ultimately setting the metrics for measurement, et cetera. So as this process is moving forward, this is one of those where the counties are at the table and are, happy to be there, and we are working closely to just kind of keep an eye on and understand what the new forest management plan will do differently and what the impacts of that will be. And so that's work underway that the counties are at the table for, which is great. I did have a question. The AOP in Clatsop County has caused some significant stir with local neighbors, et cetera, because there are some clear cuts that are brushing up against residential properties that people are unhappy about. Are we seeing anything akin to that in Tillamook County where we're having concerns being brought post AOP comment period? Because it has apparently become a bit of a hot conversation in Clatsop.
Yeah, no, we haven't received anything like that. I'm running through the sales in my head.
Yeah, no, I was curious because there
No.
appears to be some environmental groups that are a part of
Yeah.
assisting with sort of the
There's
publicity.
I would say there's always a huge concern around the drinking water piece of it, which I
Yeah.
think is part of the bottom line issue up there. And so we haven't had those. We don't have a lot of drinking water impacts from our operations. And, what we try to do is, as we know we're getting closer to communities or to adjacent landowners like that, we try to reach out ahead of time so that they know it's happening. But it's been a long time since we've had something here, and that's really the block of land we have. We have a lot more leeway about where we choose to do some of our operations.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that because it did end up at the county commissioner's table in Clatsop County. So just want to know if we should be kind of aware of and thinking about that showing up for us. Other question I had is, you were here, I don't know, a few months ago, many months ago, it all blends.
Yeah.
And you were going for a grant that would allow you to do some work with the Swiss needle cast trees. And is that grant still hanging out there? Has it been awarded or?
It is, to my knowledge, it hasn't been awarded yet, so it's still hanging out
Okay,
there.
it was federal, right?
Yeah, it was a federal process.
Okay, thought about that when you were talking about invasive species, not the same thing, but just,
Yeah.
That need to do that sort of maintenance on the landscape that's a little bit different than traditional harvest. So I was
Yeah.
curious if we knew anything about that yet.
Yeah.
So we don't. Okay, perfect, thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Any other questions?
Well, thank you. Back to the campsites, do you or does the Department of Forestry track if, in other words, you have like a separate division or an accounting system that says that they're standing on their own, they pay their own way, or are they subsidized, or do you know?
Yes, we track all the costs for each of our campgrounds as well as the revenue that comes in from those. And so for Department of Forestry, we kind of work out of, or I shouldn't say, in the State Forest Division, we work out of one pot of money. So yes, we're paying for those campgrounds. They do not fund themselves because they're such low cost, especially when you compare it to other campgrounds, parks, counties, all those kind of things. And so part of that too, right, is we pay into the transient lodging tax at the county level as well as the state level. And so for those campgrounds, we work with a lot of volunteers at the Forest Center with our camp host, trail maintenance, those kind of pieces to help offset some of our costs.
You know about how many there are just in Tillamook County itself?
Of campgrounds?
Campgrounds or actual campsites?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I can tell you there's 6 campgrounds within Tillamook County within the state forest. And so that's everywhere from Browns Camp to up north Nehalem, on the Nehalem River up there to Nehalem Falls Campground. So we have them across the forest.
Last comment is when you earlier spoke to the human-caused fires, I was a bit dismayed, as Commissioner Bell was, that there are 300 plus now, and you've determined nearly all of them are human-caused. And what are we going to do about that?
Well, that's the campaign, right, that you see each year with Keep Oregon Green and through our educational purposes and just trying to compare year to year. in the public use regulations, I know when we go into fire season, we do regulate the public on what you can, when you can mow. You know, we can't use tracer rounds, all those kind of things, and having campfires just within designated areas. And I know the public doesn't like that at times, but there's a reason for all those rules, and it continues to be regulated in that time frame. So the declaration of the fire season, as well as working with our partners at the Fire Defense Board, helps us kind of get that message out, but also to regulate, to do cost collections so folks understand what those costs are. We've been successful at a very local level on cost collection with folks that have been responsible parties of fire starts. But I think, like you asked the question around if there's been legal action, and I would say that by the time we get through an investigation, by the time we get through cost collections and those kind of billing type of things, that we also, to take legal action, is so far down the road that sometimes people don't, say point A to point B, this was a cause and a consequence of it.
I would think it would be fairly hard to prove if you actually had a criminal charge of some sort, but.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on that subject, I was thinking when you said that several fires recently have been determined to be from tow chains, is there something the legislature could do about that? Could we
Yeah.
enact new rules about tow chains?
Well, I don't know if the legislature, as much as I know that there's a lot more outreach at marinas now, at boat ramps, all those kind of pieces as well. And I think that those are things that in the past that folks really haven't noticed. A few weeks ago, I followed a camper trailer down the road that had something, bang against the pavement all the way into town, and trying to get folks stopped to realize that everything needs to be secured. And just like when you go to the transfer station, you need to secure your load.
Yeah.
And so it's very similar. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One other question I had was, you talked about conducting density and operational surveys for northern spotted owls and marbled murrelets.
Mhm.
Several weeks ago, I read an article, and now my details are fuzzy, but it was someplace in Oregon where barred owls are being, what's the right word for that? Are being eliminated because they present the threat, because are they an invasive species? And do you know, it wasn't here, but it's somewhere in the state. Do you know if
Yeah.
that's effective, or can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there's been work more in southern Oregon, definitely in California. They've done this kind of work where they've removed barred owls. And what they see is the population of spotted owls does grow with the removal of barred owls, but then as soon as you stop that elimination program, barred owls repopulate the site very quickly. So they're just can exist on the fringe of things and are much more adaptable. And so they aren't considered an invasive species, so to speak. They have migrated and become very well established in the western U.S. So we have them in the Tillamook as well, and that's part of the survey protocols. They do collect data on when they see and hear barred owls, so we can kind of look at that data as well with the use. And one of the things that the surveyors have said over the years is that the spotted owls have basically gotten quieter, and so it's been harder to survey for them because they don't want anybody to know their location, especially the barred owls.
Barred owl, yeah. That
So,
makes sense.
yeah, so it's been, so we have a lot of data on barred owls because they are everywhere now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thanks for your time. It's very interesting. I appreciate you coming and visiting us regularly, and I look forward to our field trip in September.
All right, thanks so much. Have a great day.
Okay, moving on, I will invite Eric and Abby to come up. Item 6 on our agenda is consideration of a notice of federal interest in the Department of Health and Human Services Health Resources and Services Administration Grant Number 1 CE1HS 52677-01-00 to Northwest Medical Foundation of Tillamook. And with us, we have Eric Swanson, President of Adventist Health Tillamook, and Abby, an intern, whom I will invite you to introduce yourself, because if you told me your last name, I've forgotten it.
My name is Abby Sissons. I'm a university student at Walla Walla, going into my senior year, and I'm studying business administration, and I'm an HR intern at Tillamook.
Welcome.
Avenue South Tillamook.
Welcome. Glad to have you. Good morning, Eric. Glad to have you here.
Commissioners, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So thank you for reading that long description.
You're welcome.
What I'm really here to talk to you as my landlord. We have a project that we are about to start with expanding the surgery suites. And I'll show you some renderings of that in a moment. But since $1 million came from a congressionally directed funding from Congressman Schrader when he was in office, we have some hoops to jump through, and Rachel has kindly put together the documents for you to approve. But I just kind of wanted to show you what our project looks like. We have $1 million from Schrader's office, and then we have Adventist Health has invested $16.8 million in our project that's going to kick off. So this is what it's going to look like on the back side of the hospital. It'll take a second and it'll pop up. The existing surgery suite is sort of here in the center. I guess you can't see my cursor on there. On the right is the loading dock for the cafeteria. That's where all of our food comes in, one of my favorite spots of the hospital. And then the new surgery, current surgery suite will be remodeled and an expansion done on the east side. So there's 6 or 7 parking spots and a large concrete picnic area. And Commissioner Bell, when you work there, when you work there, right outside your window, that's where it's going to go.
Okay.
This is the architect's rendering of what it looks like in the pre-op and the post-op area, and that's one of our bottlenecks in the hospital when it comes to efficiency with the operating rooms, that we could do more surgery cases, but when we're using our current post-anesthesia area and pre-anesthesia area, there's a bottleneck. And for those of you who haven't been down there in a while, the pre-anesthesia area is actually the old emergency department. So any of us who've been around prior to 1999 and came into the emergency department, it doesn't look a whole lot different. And then the post-anesthesia area is quite small and crowded, and it's actually part of the old emergency department waiting room. So all of that is going to be fixed and modernized, and we'll have state-of-the-art post-anesthesia, pre-anesthesia areas, so we can have better throughput. This is a rendering of what an operating room will look like. There'll be 4 operating room suites. Currently, we have 3 in a scope room, but we'll have 4 full suites. One will be used as a scope room, but can quickly convert over to an operating room if it's needed. And it will, because we're upgrading the surgery suites, we're required to follow the current guidelines for post-anesthesia, pre-anesthesia areas as well. And this is what one of the this is post-anesthesia area will look like, and the nurses station. So we're excited about the project. It's going to be a big one. Hopefully we'll start this fall. We're working on figuring out a date for groundbreaking, and done in late 25, early 26. So what questions do you have for me, or for Abby?
So as you're doing this, will you have surgery located somewhere else for that window of time, or how does it going to impact that?
So the contractor and the architects have a phased approach, so there'll be no disruption in surgery. We actually considered 2 temporary mobile surgery suites. The cost was just outrageous. The OHA has significant requirements for temporary surgical suites, so it would have been a $6 million project just to put in 2 temporary surgery suites and all of the foundation and everything. It's not like you can pull a trailer up and make a doorway to it.
Yeah.
They have significant requirements. So after much discussion, we decided that it would be better for us just to build out the whole project, invest a little more, invest for the future and for future growth. And so yes, we'll continue to do surgeries just like normal, and we will use a phased approach to the construction project.
Perfect. And talk a little about the kinds of surgeries that you do and the numbers of surgeries. I don't know if folks know that. Do you have that?
I don't know if I remember the number of surgeries, but we do a lot of orthopedic cases. Dr. LaFleur is an outstanding orthopedic surgeon, and so he does a lot of orthopedic cases. We have a podiatrist, Dr. Ricks, who does podiatry cases every week. 2 general surgeons, Dr. Foss and Pitts, who do all of your general surgery stuff, from hernias and gallbladders to appendectomies. They do a lot of scope work for your preventative screening for colon cancer. And we have 2 OBGYN physicians who practice there also. We have Dr. Kaba, who's an ear, nose, and throat specialist. So he's taking tonsils out and doing those kinds of things. We have Dr. Klein, who's a urologist, and he does cases every other week. And so that's sort of the breadth.
Yeah.
Yesterday, they had 11 surgery cases scheduled. So the days kind of depends whose day it is to do surgery, because each surgeon has block time and how many people they fit in. I just wish I knew right off the top of my head how many cases we do a year, and I can't remember that number.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. I think that's one of the things that I don't know if our community realizes and recognizes is just how much work is done right here in Tillamook County to the health of those who live here. I think a lot of times people think, well, if I'm going to have something like a surgery, I probably need to go over the hill. And it's just amazing the breadth of services that you all are able to offer through our hospital. And I certainly appreciate that you're here and the work that you do, and being able to get my healthcare close to home. So thank you.
That's really our goal, is
Yeah.
to provide care close to home and do things that are appropriate for critical access hospital to do. Like I've told some people in passing, if we start doing brain surgery, probably should find somewhere else to go, right? Because that's not what our sweet spot is. That's
Right.
not what we should be doing. That's
Right.
not our expertise. And so this will help with throughput, so we don't have to perhaps schedule people out as far. Because I've had some of my secret shoppers tell me, it's going to take me X number of weeks to get in to get this procedure done.
Yeah.
And we don't want people to wait when they know they need to have a procedure done.
Right.
We need to get them in as quickly as possible. And this is one of the ways for long-term to help resolve some of those bottlenecks. They were super creative back in the late 90s when they created the new surgery suite, but it's just, we've outgrown it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming over, Eric. And the more I learn about the hospital, having sat on the board for a number of years, the more impressed I am with what you do, and what your plans are long-term. And for a small community, it's just great. Could you update folks again who might not have listened into our weekly radio, the renal situation, and if there's any progress at all, just for those who might be tuning in?
Absolutely, I'm glad to do that. So for more than 20 years, Adventist Health Tillamook has been the landlord for most recently U.S. Renal Care. And we provide space in the basement of our hospital for them to operate a dialysis center. A few months ago, they made the difficult decision to stop providing dialysis service in Tillamook County, which is absolutely devastating. Unfortunately, it's not again, when we talk about strength, it's not a strength of a critical access hospital to do outpatient dialysis. So I have been working to find a solution, find someone who would come to Tillamook County and operate a dialysis center. Because the people that we're talking about are friends and neighbors, right? And to have somebody who has to commute to Lincoln City, to Astoria, to Forest Grove, to Portland, 2-3 days a week for dialysis is just untenable. So I've been working with a dialysis company, and basically what I can tell you specifically today is they have not yet told me no. They are interested in coming to Tillamook. They haven't told me no, but they have due diligence, and it's not just as easy as turning on the lights and, hey, come on in, we can go to work. There's a bunch of hoops that they have to jump through, and they're going through their due diligence phase right now. So if you all have a prayer list, this is something to be on it. that all of the roadblocks will get out of their way and they'll make a permanent home here in Tillamook County. And so that's really the details that I can give you today. We have some non-disclosure agreements, so I can't get into the nitty-gritty, but they have not told me no. And I just had a conversation with them on Monday afternoon, and we have another conversation next week to try and get through all the pieces. We at Adventist Health Tillamook have agreed to and are willing to provide this space at no cost to them, and to provide an LCSW and provide a dietitian because they require them, and at no cost to the dialysis company. They'd be using our staff to do that. So we're doing everything that we possibly can to make the deal as sweet as possible for them to come to Tillamook.
Thank you. One other kind of a general 30,000-foot question. I remember the difficulties, and I've seen and heard it elsewhere, of getting medical people now. The market is always difficult, and nurses generally are employed about the day after they graduate and so on. Could you speak to how hard it is to get medical trained people to come to Tillamook, or maybe the bigger universe, but Tillamook in particular, because I remember some cases where a couple was hired, a husband-wife team or partners of some kind, and one of them would come down and be reasonably happy and the other would not, and so complicated things, which is true with a lot of employers, but could you spend a moment or two on that subject?
Sure. So when it comes to nurses, we are very blessed here that Tillamook Bay Community College has a nursing program that they started. That is going to be an ultimate game changer for us. I'm optimistic that we'll be at a point one day, not within the next 2 or 3 cohorts, where we're saying, we can't hire any more nurses. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? But thank you to Tillamook Bay Community College for doing that. It's a huge undertaking. So to recruit a nurse to our hospital in Portland, on the east side of Portland, from the time they post an RN job until it's filled is about 30 days on average. If we go to our hospital in Hawaii, which is on an island, they're at about 45 days. Tillamook is over 90. So it's really difficult. And we have, the last time I looked at the data, time to fill an RN position in 28 Adventist Health hospitals, Tillamook's was the longest.
Ooh.
So I don't know why people don't want to come to Tillamook and live and work. I think it's great here. I think Abby will think it's great here by the end of the summer. But I think that it's unfortunate people don't want to come here. We've been interviewing this week for a leadership role, and part of the conversation with a couple of the people is, what do you think about living in a small community? Nordstrom is an hour and a half away. For closest Costco is an hour and 10 minutes. Getting them in that mindset, right? Yeah. So I think that plays a part. We use Merritt Hawkins to do recruiting for physicians. And Merritt Hawkins, their data, they're a national recruiting firm, and their data shows that 2% of all physicians have an interest in working in a community less than 25,000. 1% are willing to work in a community of less than 10,000.
Wow.
So we have some barriers, right, to get just recruit physicians into our community. It's interesting that there's a data point out there from the National Rural Health Association that shows that a physician who's not an MD but instead a DO is more likely to practice in a rural community. Why that is, I don't know. It's just on their infographic. So we deal with that all the time, trying to get people to come to a rural community. I think working and living in a rural community is the best. I don't want to do anything else. And I was talking with someone yesterday about what an honor it is to serve your friends and family in healthcare. And in a big urban center, how often are you going to walk through the lobby and see your neighbor? Yeah. You might, but that happens to me every day, where I see friends and family coming through the hospital. They're in the lobby. Some of them are eating in my cafeteria, Sarah. So we get, it's a different environment, and I find it very special, and I find it rewarding. And so we work really hard to recruit the right people. And I think TVCC for our nursing program is going to help with that, because these people already understand rural Tillamook, most of them, and most of them live here, want to be here, don't want to go anywhere else. And that is the sweet spot for us with our nurses. This year, through the end of June, we have only had a turnover of 5 RNs, which is well below the national benchmark for RN turnover, and we're really proud of that number. And that was full-time RNs who turned over and chose to go somewhere else. And some of them had some real legitimate reasons to go other places, like my husband got a job in Massachusetts and I'm going to continue to be married and go with him. So that's not necessarily bad turnover. We'll miss the nurse, but we're thankful that she has other opportunities on the East Coast. So does that help?
It certainly does. Thank you, Eric.
Well, thank you for being here. Thanks for your patience this morning. Welcome, Abby. I had just a couple things. One, I just yesterday had a conversation with someone about Dr. LaFleur, the orthopedic surgeon you were talking about, and about his excellent outcomes. And to Commissioner Scar's point, I think it's possible that not everyone knows that we have a world-class orthopedic surgeon right here in Tillamook. And if people were checking out the reviews or the stats, they would learn that Dr. LaFleur's outcomes are excellent. And if I were going to have a joint replacement, I would do it right here. Not only for the convenience, but because his outcomes are so, so good that I believe I wouldn't get a better service in the Valley.
We compare his outcomes against 2 different data sets. One is all of the orthopedic surgeons in Adventist Health, and at 28 hospitals across the West, we have a lot of orthopedic surgeons. And then this other group of orthopedic surgeons that submit their data to this database called CODE. And his complications are lower than the Adventist Health peers and lower than the core data set. And his outcomes are better in both of those when you're stacking him up against the others. He is world-class, and we are so blessed to have him working here. Yeah, he's outstanding.
Yeah, thank you. I agree completely. In the last 6 months or so, I've worked with 2 people who had joint replacements, and both older folks and significant joint replacement, hip, and their recovery was so good. It was fast, and they didn't have a lot of pain, and they had no complications, and they were up and moving in short order. And now, they've regained their mobility, and and I hear those stories time after time after time from Dr. LaFleur's patients that, wow, I thought this was going to be terrible, and it totally wasn't.
It is fun to watch during our monthly Orthopedic Advisory Council how they dig into each case and say, how could we have done this better? How could we have got them up walking sooner? How could we have treated their pain more effectively? Did the on-cue pump work? What can we do better next time? How can we be more efficient in the operating room? And it is continuous quality improvement like that that creates excellence. And he is a star. And
Yeah.
we are blessed to have him here.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. I wanted to mention that as members of your Civic Advisory Board, we've been hearing about this problem with the surgery floor for a long time.
Yes.
And so is that presumably the reason that all of this got started, was that the surgery floor was moving or sinking?
Yes. So in the west end of the surgery suites, the actual surgical rooms, the floor has been settling and sagging, and we're worried that, Dr. Foss is going to get into a sinkhole. So this is this is how this started. And so by the approach that we're taking, we're not going to put in a stopgap fix that will work for 5 years, 10 years. Because we talked about injecting the floor with foam and raising it and all this stuff. Because of the approach that the team is taking, those areas will actually be, the floors will be torn out, new gravel put in, compacted, done correctly, and new floor will be put in. So it will be a complete fix, not just a temporary fix. So
Excellent.
we're very happy about that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, to wrap up, I just wanted to say how grateful I am, and I believe we all are, for Adventist Health's investment in Tillamook in general, but also specific to this project. I heard you say at the beginning of your presentation that Adventist Health is investing $16.9 million in this upgrade that will benefit Tillamook County residents. So,
And you'll be seeing, Commissioner, you'll be seeing a press release coming out in the next few days. In addition to this 16.9, they also invested about 1.4 in new fluoroscopy room, new x-ray room, and new portable x-ray. And so we're looking at, just in the last year, they've committed $18 million to Tillamook, which is huge.
it is huge. Yeah, thank you. And in closing, welcome, Abby. We hope you enjoy your time here in Tillamook. For how long will you be here?
Till the end of August.
Okay, well, I hope it's a great experience for you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Commissioner,
Anything else?
I have
Please.
one more item. I just wanted to mention, as we've talked about numerous times, and we're in the process, we the county, are in the process of putting a bond measure before the voters to replace the public safety radio system in Tillamook County, and obviously the ambulance system is an integral part of that. And we have a separate organization, totally separate from the county, just to talk about that issue and explain to voters why it might be a good idea to support this, which the county will present all the facts, but this other group can give some encouragement to support it. And I will just say the hospital has been a supporter of that now, and I want to thank them publicly for their contributions, and there'll be much more to talk about, and hopefully we'll get some of their ambulance drivers and others to help us get the word out as well. So thank you publicly for that.
Thank you. Glad to be part of that.
Okay,
I think we're ready for
we're
a
ready.
motion.
Okay, we get to read that long statement again. Madam Chair, in consideration of a notice of federal interest in the Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration, Grant Number 1, CE 1HS52677-01-00 to Northwest Medical Foundation of Tillamook, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 7, consideration of out-of-state travel request for Rocky Phillips to attend the Northwest Center for Public Health Management certificate class in Seattle, Washington on August 18th, 2024 through August 22nd. And I believe Irene Fitzgerald is going to take this item for us. Good morning, Irene.
Morning. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Yay. Yay. Irene Fitzgerald for the Health Department. We have travel for our Public Health Deputy Director, who is going to Seattle to get her certificate with Public Health Practice Management. The travel will be reimbursed from different agencies, mainly Chloe, the Coalition of Local Health Officers, and they'll get a grant for the actual training, and they'll reimburse us for all the other expenses, or majority of the other expenses related to the travel.
Terrific. Commissioners?
I think this is really exciting for Rocky to be able to go and get her certificate as our deputy for public health. She's doing a great job, and I know we want to provide her with as much training and expertise as we can. And so this is great.
Yes.
The fact that Chloe is going to pay for it, I was going through all the email thread. I was like, that is even more amazing, because it is a
very exciting.
$4,500
It is.
training. It's a 4-day certification course, so it's it's significant education and a certification that's very valuable, and to have Chloe pay for that is just even better. So I am in
Very
support. This
excited
is
about
great.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Oh, thank you. I did read the backup material as well, and I can't imagine a profession that would require any more training than medical. It's if you don't have ongoing training on the medical side, including administrative side, in a matter of a few years, you're totally out of date and almost useless to the system in terms of what's going on in the real world. So I absolutely support this effort, and the fact that it's reimbursed, that's even better.
Likewise, my fellow commissioners said it well. I'm glad that Rocky has this opportunity, and also glad that someone else is paying for it. So
Yes.
perfect.
All right, so Madam Chair, in consideration of an out-of-state travel request for Rocky Phillips to attend the Northwest Center for Public Health Management certificate class in Seattle, Washington on 8/8 of '24 through 8/22 of '24, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Irene.
Thank you.
Item 8 is consideration of modification number 4 to professional services agreement number 6200 with RSS Architecture PC for the Tillamook County Health Center's 8th Street Annex addition and remodel project. And Commissioner Scar is going to take this item.
I will. So we have been working on this remodel project for quite some time, like a year and a half now, I think, and we are getting to the final wrap-up of that. And this, there are just a few little pieces left to be done. I think one of them is putting the generator in place, and then any final touches that we need to complete the building. So the modification extends the term date for the architect for these additions, and then increases the fee that is paid to the architect for the work. So we're almost there, and this should push us over the finish line.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you. I'm also in support of that. I happen to know the architect reasonably well, having worked with him on other projects, including the fire station in Hebo. But I did have a question, perhaps Rachel could speak to this. We use architects and engineers a lot, and sometimes they're for relatively modest amounts of money. Do we have, or have the county ever done a kind of a requirements bid, I'd say, where we had somebody not necessarily on a retainer, but would be used for these projects that come along, or would we just do it case by case, like in this instance?
It's typically case by case because, in my opinion, because the threshold for direct appoint is $100,000. And so a lot of these projects, especially with Public Works and some that I'm working on, we can do and get completed for under $100,000. And so we can just pick someone. And then if we do need to do an RFP, it's not too much of an onerous process. And typically we get responses from people that we've worked with already.
Well, and I understand the rules and the threshold, and I'm very comfortable with that because we have a known quantity and the work gets done. But if you added all these up, it's probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm just thinking at some point, maybe you could say for a 24-month period, we'd have one architectural team or two under an agreement for that period of time. Just put it on the table, something to think about in the future. But and as I said, this individual that I happen to have worked with, he's very, very competent, got a good staff. He's what I would call a smaller, he's not in downtown Portland, he's in Woodburn. And I don't know that he's ever done a $20 million project, but he's done lots of $1 million and smaller ones like this, and very competent. So I'm not going there at all. I'm just talking about the process. And so, I'm good with this one as well. Just a question for maybe down the road.
Thank you. I'm certainly supportive of this and excited to get that project completed and open.
Perfect. Madam Chair, in consideration of modification number 4 to professional services agreement number 6200 with RSS Architecture PC for the Tillamook County Health Center 8th Street Annex addition and remodel project, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Okay, item 9 is consideration of a professional services agreement with Universal Field Services for property acquisition services for the Big Trout Bridge project. And with us, we have Chris Leidy, the Director of Public Works. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Commissioners. So fairly short, next week we'll be presenting a contract for FEMA This project here is for Universal Field Services to conduct appraisals of properties on the far side and also to conduct relocation services should FEMA participate in a buyout option. Pretty simple. I'll keep it short and brief you have a long agenda today.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Thank you. No, it's another step in the issue that we've talked about on several occasions at the Big Trout Bridge. And it unfortunately, just the topography and the fact that rivers meander and things change, some individuals, including the county, found ourselves in a bit of a predicament where water was going to encroach on some private property, and a solution had to be found, and I think this is part of it. So we'll keep it moving.
Thank you.
Agreed. This has been a difficult one. I know we've been working on it for a couple of years at least to try to find a good solution, both for the property owners who are living there and for the county who's responsible for providing access to their property. And I think we're heading down what we hope will be a good road that gets some outside resources to help us. So I'm in support.
As am I. I think we're ready for the motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a professional services agreement with Universal Field Services for property acquisition services for the Big Trout Bridge project, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Chris. Item 10 is consideration of amendment number 1 to the State of Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Overflow Sewer and Stormwater Grant Agreement number 027-024 for the Pacific City Transfer Station. With us, we have Justin Weiss, the Solid Waste Program Manager. Good morning, Justin.
Morning, Commissioners. Before you this morning, we have an amendment to the OSG grant agreement for the Pacific City project. So this was approved back in January. It allows us to access $320,000 for capital improvements. They do have to be focused on stormwater, but we're looking to put in a building for the recycling materials with the new Recycling Modernization Act kicking in July of next year. We're going to be accepting more materials, so that'll keep people nice and dry, keep the materials clean, and give us more operational capacity in Pacific City. So this was something that DEQ took action on their own. We initially had to match 20% of the grant funds spent. We were going to access that through our SRF loan money, but DEQ came back and eliminated the match so we can use the grant funds freely for the project, and that will allow us to reduce our utilization of the loan funds. So a great project, and we also have an agreement with Manzanita that was approved, and we're hoping that we'll also have the match waived on this. So this will allow us to freely use the funds, and we are currently working to get the professional services agreement finalized with the engineers in the next week or two, and then we'll get underway on the project. So happy to answer questions if you do have any.
Thank you, Justin. Commissioner?
Thank you. I have no questions. I did attend the advisory committee meeting yesterday afternoon and went into the evening actually a little bit. When unrelated to this requested action today, I've got a couple of comments when we're done with this one, if I might. But as far as what is asked for today, we've talked about that before. I think it's a necessary improvement, and it helps, in this case, Pacific City contain what goes on in that site. So yes, it needs to go forward.
Thank you. Do you want to address your other comments now, or would you rather wait?
Let's wait until we pass a motion.
Okay.
I'm in support. No questions.
Okay, as am I.
Madam Chair, in consideration of amendment number 1 to the State of Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Overflow Sewer and Stormwater Grant Agreement number 027-024 for the Pacific City Transfer Station, I move approval.
And second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. Just a couple of items that it came to the board's attention here, I guess, in the fairly recent past, that some people who were using the services at maybe all three transfer stations, but specifically Pacific City and Manzanita, they had received such good service helpful employees and so on, that they were offering tips to those employees. And that is not acceptable, and so I brought it up at the meeting last night. And our treasurer happened to be online, and so she came in as well and said that even though these people have performed a very fine service, and the people felt grateful for helping them unload their stuff, garbage, refuse, they wanted to give them a few extra dollars, but that would confound the payroll system of the county and really was not good practice because it's not done elsewhere and couldn't be administrated, fall into some kind of pattern equitably, and so there's a whole bunch of reasons. So you hate to say that somebody can't be rewarded for exceptional service, but I think that's the way it was. And so we discussed that, and Justin will get that word out, and if it requires putting up a sign or some kind of notice, I guess they can do that. But so I'll ask Justin if he wants to comment on that, or any reason that requires further discussion. It's not unusual, but it's part of, I guess, being in public employment is you generally don't solicit or accept tips.
Yeah, Commissioner Olson, we did speak, we had a good conversation yesterday at the Solid Waste Advisory Committee regarding the topic. And in my 3-year tenure, kind of the policy had shifted under my predecessor. We did accept some tips as a communal entity and use those for on-site drinks and things of that nature. But about 1.5 years ago, we had some issues with that. And I know Dave McCall, my predecessor, had some meetings and talked with the treasurer. And so we implemented a policy of no tips, I would say roughly about 1.5 years ago. And that's the policy we've maintained, but it does get difficult at times when people are very adamant about giving you the money. And, we do get cookies. We talked yesterday about other gifts, hats, cookies, clothing, things of that nature. So I will reiterate the policy with staff at each site, and we're maintaining that, no monetary compensation or tips will be accepted at the transfer station. So we will remind staff of that and carry that moving forward.
Well, thank you. I hate to throw cold water on what is just a human-to-human service. And, we all go to restaurants and, you almost always leave a few dollars for the servers and others, but can't be done under these circumstances. So the second thing that came up, and I asked legal counsel earlier, and we won't get an answer today, but at a previous meeting, it was recorded, as we generally do here when our system is working. And then Justin had made arrangements with a private firm that transcribes recordings through artificial intelligence. And it turned into a written document. And the written document was part of the minutes that were presented forward for consideration. And the transcriptions, from what I could tell, and I don't remember all the details from the last meeting, but the transcription appeared to be accurate word for word, down to even slang words and other things. So you can say the AI works. But my question, and maybe it's a longer term question for council, is do we put anything at jeopardy when you turn over minutes of a public meeting to a third-party firm that is using technology that is cutting edge, but probably not been tested through any legislative process or judicial process or anything like that? So that's my first question. The second question, I guess, maybe you could answer this today. I don't understand that minutes need to be that specific. If you have names of who presented a motion and it was passed or not, and those kinds of things, and who's present, and did you have a quorum, I'm not sure you need to have all that on hand. So maybe I'll ask the council to comment.
You're right, Doug, you don't. It just needs to be a fair summary of what went on. It doesn't have to be word for word, and it does have to indicate who, if the motion was made, how the motion was determined, and who voted yea or nay on it. But,
Sure.
so my inclination is that it would be fine to do that with AI. So.
Well, and I would expect since that's pretty new technology, that eventually it'll wind up before some judge that something wasn't done right, or they missed, who knows. And so I just put it out there now is that our solid waste people are on the absolute cutting edge of technology. And so, Justin, did you want to add to that at all? How did we get to there?
Yeah, so we've had some turnover in the public works / solid waste admin specialist position where we've been through a couple temporary positions and people on leave and so forth. So I've been a little strapped with time, and the minutes was just kind of a daunting task. And so I turned to the cutting edge of technology and did a little research on some AI tools. The company is called Rev, R-E-V, and yeah, I uploaded the 1.5-hour video from our previous Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting. And yeah, as you mentioned, Commissioner Olshan, it was fairly accurate. I did a quick review, fixed a couple things, but I do think, as you mentioned, it's a little bit overkill. It's a complete transcription. And we did talk yesterday at the SWAC meeting about whether when we take votes, how specific and detailed the minutes should be compared to a lot of the other conversation and discourse that occurs throughout the meeting. So that's something I'll have to look into. But yeah, it was a turnaround within an hour and interesting technology, but not ideal moving forward. We hope to fill the admin specialist position, public works / solid waste, and get a little bit more refined and detailed minutes as we've had in the past. But this was kind of a stopgap measure to assist with completing the task in a timely manner. So interesting technology. It is very interesting. I have mixed feelings about it, but it was great in a pinch.
Well, thank you. I know the minutes ran to 70-some pages, so we had chopped down one more tree to get that done. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to put that on the record that, you know, it's not necessary, as we just learned, and I would agree with that totally, but it's, you know, I guess it was a worthwhile experiment to see what happened, and I'm sure we'll hear more and more about that as we move forward.
Thank you. I think that's very interesting. Okay.
I've started attending, or have meetings that I attend that have started to be attended by AI in the absence of someone who can't be there that day.
Mhm.
So their, you know, assistant or whatever will log in with I don't know if this camera was called ReadMe or something, and it generates for them an AI log of the meeting. And it's interesting, Doug, because I have had some meetings where the conveners of the meeting have said, please do not send your AI bot. You know, that's not appropriate to create that sort of a record of this meeting because it is not otherwise recorded. So yeah, so it's an interesting space. And Bill, we'll look forward to what you have to share with us as you investigate AI in the workplace in terms of those meeting bots, because they are definitely showing up in the place of real people in meetings. So
that is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the applications for writing. You know, if there's a program where I could just talk and it's transcribed into writing, that might save a lot of time. And that's interesting.
Because they've been around but have not been very effective in the past. We tried to get one for my dad because he wanted to do his memoirs, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but it was not very effective. It created some interesting things.
That's funny. I was at an event recently where someone stood up and gave a speech, and we were all wowed by this speech. And it was very impressive, you know, really, and unexpected from the speaker, like, wow, what a speech. And then afterward I said, well done on that speech. And he said, AI. It was good.
Yeah. No, I think we're seeing that. It was funny. My nomination at AOC for the AOC president, Commissioner Andrews uses AI. He said, I do have to tell you, it was AI.
There you
I
go.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. Do we have anything else for Justin?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you,
So
Commissioner.
now I would like to, sorry, did somebody say something? Okay. Maybe I'm hearing things now. And now I would like to flip items 11 and 12 in the agenda and take item 12 next out of consideration for Kevin Schluka, who's been with us for an hour and a half. He is here for item 12. Thank you for your patience. I'd like to invite you up to the front with Parker. Item 12 is consideration of a workforce housing property tax exemption application for Kingfisher LLC's multifamily housing development project. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Parker Sammons. I am the housing coordinator for Tillamook County.
My name is Kevin Schluka. I live in Hebo, and my wife and I were primary developers for the Kingfisher Apartments in Pacific City.
Welcome. Thank you for your patience this morning.
This is the first application to the workforce housing property tax exemption. I have sent Mr. Schulka the application that we finished up a couple weeks ago, and everything has been approved. I've reviewed it, and he meets all of the qualifications for the property tax exemption, and I'm here to seek approval for it.
Excellent. Would you like to say anything about your project for folks who are watching?
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, developing any apartment, I think, particularly workforce housing, it's a living organism. And it was in vitro for a long, long time, this one. But it's at a wonderful point, and it's a very healthy organism right now. And I think we have Tillamook County to thank in large part. Probably the primary obstacles in making this happen were access to capital and then the land use portion. And Tillamook County has actively and successfully worked towards easing those paths. So the work they're doing, particularly in the workforce housing realm, is quite impressive. So I have a lot to commend and to thank for that.
Thank you. I know that the first time you talked to me about this project was 5.5 years ago.
Yes.
So is that about when the idea started, or has it been even longer?
Probably close to 6 years now, or perhaps even over 6 years. And I'm working on other projects in the realm right now, and disappointed that to a large degree the state and other municipalities haven't moved much forward. So I think Tillamook County is going to be the flag bearer in this, and will probably be recognized and leaned on to a large degree moving forward.
That's great. Thank you. The Kingfisher Apartments are beautiful. I haven't been inside, but I've been by multiple times. It's gorgeous. It's a really great accomplishment.
Thank you.
So yeah, bravo.
Great team, great architect, great landscaper.
We're laughing because that's Kevin's wife, Katie.
Exactly right. Yeah. We just it was greater than the sum of its part, surely.
That's wonderful. And I'm recalling that when we were talking about incentivizing workforce housing, we were talking about what are the things that we can do that would make a difference, that would shift the profit margin, make it somebody be able, in your position, be able to at least break even and hopefully make a profit. So can you talk about how your work is influenced by this tax exemption, for example?
Well, as a matter of fact, when we had our first meeting with Director Absher many years ago, I went directly from her office to Commissioner Bartline's office and said, we've got this in the works, what can the county do for us? And at the time, Commissioner Bartline was saying that he had a mandate to start a committee, but hadn't quite gotten around to it yet. And so we said, please get around to it. And if you can, make a tax exemption high on your list of first things to accomplish, because while it's complicated to have lenders and appraisers recognize it as part of the sort of pro forma, the business strategy of a project like this, it's so helpful, and it's such a meaningful way to move projects like these forward. And it's been a lot of work. It's taken 3 committee directors and many years for this and a lot of refinement to get here. But it's really important work. I had a conversation with Oregon Housing and Community Services. The state's trying to put together a framework for cities and counties to do this. And I think they're going, like I said, lean on Tillamook a lot to find out what went wrong and what's going to go right with this.
Thank you.
If I'd like to add that this is a first of its type property tax exemption, and that all of our neighbors have been contacting me asking for information about how to bring this to their community. So as we talk about what's working here, it's working well enough that other people are taking notice and asking for our help to implement the same policy.
Wonderful. Commissioners?
Yeah, no, I remember my first conversation with Kevin as well. It was when I was at CARE and we were just trying to we had the Housing Task Force, which was the predecessor to the Housing Commission. And you said, please keep me on the list. We really want to do this. So I look at what you've done as a labor of love, for your community and for the people that you could see who needed housing, some of which included your workers. But you all stuck with this through an amazing set of challenges. In doing that task force work and the commission work, part of what we did is go out and ask what the challenges were. And I think you had every single one of them that was ever on any list everywhere, right? So, and you and Katie hung in there and said, no, we're going to make sure this happens. We're going to push through it. We're going to really require everyone to come up with solutions to the barriers, right? I mean, instead of saying, well, that's a barrier, I quit, you said, that's a barrier, what do we do about it? And that's fantastic. That's what it takes. You all have been the test case, if you will, for workforce housing. When the state doesn't have tools, like, they have all these tools for affordable, not for workforce. And you actually got some of the money, I think, via what started with Pelican came to you, which was the state's first attempt at funding any kind of workforce housing. So when you talk about Tillamook County being in the forefront and all of that, it's because you gave us the opportunity to do that by being willing to take that money, take its restrictions, and continue to just push forward as well as pushing us forward. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we couldn't have done it or wouldn't have done it without a test case, right? It takes that to say it is possible. Here's our proof positive, and you are proof positive. So we appreciate that. The state of Oregon, gave all the counties the opportunity to do this tax abatement that we're doing right now, and nobody else has been willing to even try. So that credit goes to all the commissioners that came before me that passed this opportunity, because it is challenging. It is tricky. We have had to make course corrections along the way. We passed a certain set of language based on the original bill from the state legislature, and then they refined it, and we had to refine our language. And each time they realize something more has to be done or something different has to be done, we have to catch up with that. But again, without you as the test case, it wouldn't have happened. So I know that, as a county, we are constantly looking for how do we incentivize housing? How do we help this happen? And this tax abatement clearly is one of those key pieces. You said you've been through 3 housing coordinators. Yes, you have. We had Jake first, and then with TJ, I know he went with you specifically, I believe, to a lender to help them understand what this property tax abatement actually did in terms of your financial position. And it was significant enough to really, I think, push that line between would they fund you or would they not fund you. So, I mean, this is a tool that works, and it is a tool that's now been shown absolutely from a lender's perspective to work. So excited to have it on our books and hopefully be able to keep it forward. I think there's a sunset on it at the state level, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to have some work to do to show our proof positive and to keep it alive.
If I might add, thank you for all that. And this is a really gratifying moment in the life of the building. The people that are there are incredibly grateful and incredibly deserving of having such a lovely place to live and these opportunities. So it's come full circle.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, thank you. Yes, this is a project that I've watched over the years, and Kevin and I have had several meetings. And when I was on the PUD board, there were some issues there, and we convened a meeting or two and worked through some of those. But I give him really, really high marks for having started and then hanging on, because there were plenty of opportunities to walk away and say, well, this isn't going to happen, or move on and do something else. I have been through the building, and I've seen virtually every apartment in there before it was occupied, and they're really quite nice. And they have what I would characterize as a superior view to most homes, because if you're on the east side, you look out over the Nestucca River, and and up into the hills and so on. It's really quite a great piece of property, and the views are good, and the rents are below market in most cases. And so to me, it was a very worthwhile project. And not only has he gone through all the bureaucratic stuff, he's had a lawsuit to defend where people said, well, it's going to destroy the character of the neighborhood. And of course, across the street was a horse stable and camel rides. So I didn't quite see the logic in that lawsuit. And that went away as well. But if ever there was someone who just grabbed on and said, we're gonna make this happen. And I think there are, if I remember, there are 25 units,
23 units.
23 now. And you're fully occupied or darn close.
Fully occupied.
And so that's 23 places where people, individuals, maybe some families are living that before could not have afforded to live on the Oregon coast. And mind you, this is about 100 yards from the ocean. You know, this is all quite literally oceanfront property, and to have it to do what it said it would do, I think is quite remarkable. And those people who were there, and now I think most of them probably work in the area, work in South County or up here in Tillamook, maybe down to Lincoln City. They now have modern, safe, convenient housing that has been a problem for a long time in Tillamook County. So this is a wonderful step forward. So I commend them, and the fact that we get it off the tax rolls, that's even better yet. And I admire people who not only risk their own finances, but they commit a certain amount of time. And I don't know how many nights you ended up doing things that you could have done something else, or you probably missed a vacation or two. And you know, but that's what you do. That's the road to success in America, and we put you right top of the list.
Thank you so much. I wasn't expecting this to be so good for my ego, which was already pretty healthy.
Well, you earned it, and you know, not everybody can say that. You earned it,
Thank you very
and
much.
I appreciate that.
It's true. Yeah, it's extraordinary to me, never having done a development project, like the idea of, well, I'm gonna invest this money and build this project, and maybe it'll take 5 years. You know, and there'll be hurdle after hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. A lot of people would not have signed up for that or would have bailed out. And so bravo to you and Katie for sticking with it.
Well, thank you. Maybe if I had known.
Right.
There is that, right?
No, it's in hindsight, it was entirely worth it. I'm sure there were many mistakes that I could have avoided, but I learned a lot and so happy with the results.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're ready.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of a workforce housing property tax exemption application for Kingfisher LLC's multifamily housing development project, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will take up item 11, which is discussion concerning the Federal Emergency Management Agency's biological opinion updates. With us, we have Sarah Absher, the Director of the Department of Community Development. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. Well, I wish I was coming with different news today. I have some information to share that is not information that any of us are going to want to. Well, we're just not ready for this. I'll just say that, but we're going to have to get ready for it. So this is regarding the implementation of the biological opinion in the state of Oregon. Tillamook County is probably one of the most impacted counties. We have been following this for several years. And the good news is that we have been having this conversation countywide and sharing with communities and stakeholders that this is coming. So while the news today is unexpected, the overall long-term implementation plan is something we have been preparing for a long time. So I'm going to go ahead and just go through a couple of things, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. You all have a copy of the letter that was received July 15th. This letter was addressed to Commissioner Bell as chair of the commission. I was copied as the county's floodplain administrator. With this, I've also sent all three of you an outline of the meetings and the next steps that I am already planning to take over the course of the coming weeks, because we're going to have to move quickly. And I'll explain why here in a minute. So I'm going to give just a little bit of background context on what's happening, because there may be folks starting to pay attention that haven't heard of this yet. So when I'm referring to the plan, what I'm talking about is the biological opinion. And the biological opinion was authored by National Marine Fisheries, which is under the umbrella of NOAA, and it was authored at the order of a judge following a lawsuit where FEMA was sued in the state of Oregon. And the lawsuit was because FEMA, in allowing development in areas of special flood hazard, so our floodplains, and these are mapped, they have defined boundaries, because FEMA had allowed development in floodplains, this development has resulted in a take of Endangered Species Act, ESA listed species. And for our county specifically and Oregon, it's coho salmon and orca whale. So the judge, in ordering the NMFS write this biological opinion, the biological opinion was focused solely on fish recovery, meaning that local jurisdictions and communities that participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, so that's where the tie comes with FEMA. So FEMA is the umbrella for the National Flood Insurance Program, and for all of us to be part of that and to receive federal disaster assistance, we have to do what FEMA says for development to maintain in compliance and to get flood insurance and federal disaster funding relief. So part of the plan included measures to change how development occurs and how it is permitted in communities. Again, to focus on fish recovery. And what that means is that local jurisdictions like Tillamook County or our cities, as part of our land use planning program, will have to change our rules to meet now what FEMA is saying we have to do to regulate and permit development in these flood areas. And in the plan, there were two implementation phases. There was the interim compliance measures that NMFS had wrote to say jurisdictions, communities need to take these actions right now. And then there was the long-term plan, which included long-term regulatory changes that then we would all have to implement at a later date and then move forward with those. And again, I just want to stress this is for areas that are mapped flood, and those are defined boundaries. So it does not apply to every property in Tillamook County. That being said, we have a lot of floodplains, so it applies to many. So as part of what's happened, the implementation process was delayed, both for those short-term and those long-term measures. And part of the reason why it was delayed is because Tillamook County joined a coalition called Oregonians for Floodplain Coalition, Oregonians for Floodplain Protection, and sued FEMA in 2018 to stop implementation of this plan and to have a judge reconsider the outcome of that lawsuit. The plan with that, Congressman DeFazio was able to get through Congress at the same time in 2018 a stay on implementation of this plan. So that's why you haven't seen it. That's why we haven't changed all of our rules, is because that stay ordered FEMA to stop working on implementation until 2001, because it was a 3-year delay. And part of the basis for that was also to require FEMA to go back and work with local jurisdictions in the state to talk about implementation. The Center...
2001, but did you
Excuse
mean
me.
21?
Yes, thank you, 2021. Thank you for that. So fast forward, we get past 2021. We are working on the implementation plan. Tillamook County has been a cooperating agency through what is called a federal, it's like a national environmental review process for this implementation plan. So before this plan can be implemented, there is an environmental, social, and economic impact evaluation that must be done at the federal level. FEMA started that, we're all aware of that, we've been going through it, and part of that federal review process was that Tillamook County was able to participate as a cooperating agency. And we have been doing that. And some of the steps that we have been taking is working with our assessor's office, public works, parks, and others to evaluate and provide data to the FEMA consultants about the economic and social impacts that will result from implementation of this plan. I've had an opportunity to look at language for model ordinances and to talk about the policies and the wording of public documents and different things, all of those pieces that are going to come out of this federal review process and back to local jurisdictions in Oregon. And part of what FEMA has said until now is we will not require jurisdictions to implement any of the pre-implementation measures. We're going to go from the environmental review process, wait for what's called a record of decision, that then will direct us all on what we're going to have to do next, and then we'll work on full implementation. So that has been what FEMA has said until this letter came on the 15th. And what this letter says is jurisdictions are going to have to take measures now. And then what we'll do is we'll get ready for full compliance following that federal environmental review process. So it's a change.
Can
Yes.
I interrupt you there? So the reason that we're reeling from this letter is because the time frame changed.
Yes.
The time frame, the outcome is not unexpected, but the time frame is unexpected.
That is exactly correct, Commissioner Bell. Thank you. So, and FEMA, as a result of the federal environmental review process, which is called a NEPA review process, has kind of shifted that target date for final implementation. It's gone back and forth between 2025 and 2027. Initially, there was going to be a schedule, so they'd work with each jurisdiction following the completion of that federal review process, on a scheduled timeline to get us all into compliance. That compliance will require public hearings, legislative text amendments, because all of these regulations are embedded in our land use ordinance. So there will be a process, a very large process, just to get to that point once these steps are done. Pivoting now to have to look at implementation of pre-implementation measures really changes everything for us. So the intent, so what FEMA's letter says is that the intent of these preliminary implementation compliance measures is to ensure the continued existence of threatened or endangered species, right? So what they're saying is this is the reason for these interim measures is to ensure, as we look at development and permitting, that we are confirming that any type of development in these areas is compliant with the Endangered Species Act. And development is defined as any man-made or human-caused change to improved or unimproved real estate. Right? Okay. So what the letter also continues to highlight is that to ensure ongoing community participation in the NFIP. So what they're alluding to is you have to do this to ensure you will remain in the National Flood Insurance Program. And we've talked about, even just with long-term implementation, the consequences to Tillamook County and others if we do not comply. And that includes suspension of flood insurance policies for our community residents, right? And that would be for residential, commercial, and others. So FEMA says in the letter that they have acknowledged the concerns raised by local jurisdictions regarding the challenges they are facing to meet expectations of this plan. So part of what we've been working through the last few years with FEMA, myself, probably I would say at the forefront of those conversations with FEMA, is local jurisdictions are not going to be prepared to do this work. And local jurisdictions, especially smaller jurisdictions across the state, just simply don't have the staffing and the resources and the expertise on hand to meet the expectations of what FEMA is going to require us to do in reviewing development and permits in the future. And so what they have said is that FEMA will be assisting communities by providing appropriate technical assistance, help identifying available resources. They're going to deliver trainings and facilitate workshops. All of these are going to take place starting the end of this month through September, and I do plan on attending every one of those. With that, I do have just some other things I'm going to do in the interim that I want to share with you. But so basically, as these, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but basically for those pre-implementation compliance measures, FEMA is giving us 3 options. And it says, the letter says that a jurisdiction must pick an option by December 1st, 2024. Now, what I don't know, and what I'm going to be getting clarification on to come back and to report to you, is I don't know if that means implement or report and say, we have selected to go down this path. And the reason why that's concerning to me is because the letter follows it by saying we must report to FEMA on compliance measures starting January 2025. Right. And so, and what, in reading the letter, what that means to me as a floodplain administrator is they are going to want us to start reporting on permitting activities starting January 2025. And essentially, they will start auditing us on some higher level review. FEMA already audits us. They come every couple of years. They call them community assistance visits. We have a very good partnership with FEMA, but those visits aren't always as happy as they may sound or benign as they may sound. But understanding how their community assistance visits and their reporting works, to me, that will be a regular audit moving forward starting January 2025. So let's talk quickly about what those 3 options are. And these are outlined in the letter too. One option is to adopt a model ordinance that considers impacts to species and their habitat. It will require mitigation to a no net loss standard. So I'm not going to dive into the weeds today, but basically FEMA is working on a model ordinance. I believe it is, I don't even know if it's in final form because it's been part of the work that we've been doing through the environmental review process. So one of the questions I have to FEMA, and I have office hours with them on Friday, this Friday, is what does that mean? And do you have, like, what document, what version are we using that we can choose from? The no net loss standard means no net loss of floodplain function, no net loss of floodplain storage, and no net loss of riparian habitat. The riparian habitat, in my opinion, can be easy to achieve because we can work with ODF&W, the National Estuaries Partnership, Soil and Water Conservation, and others. Landowners can replant and possibly actually, enhance riparian habitat areas even more through that approach. What concerns me is the no net loss of flood storage. If you have a 5,000 square foot lot and you want to build, with the space where the home is going, how do you create space somewhere else to meet that no net loss standard? So these are things that we have to talk about. And I will be pursuing that more to see what that model ordinance will require as the benchmarks and the criteria to achieve that. The second option is to require a habitat assessment and mitigation plan for development on a permit by permit basis. So the good news is that Melissa Yang, she's our senior planner. She's also a certified floodplain manager, and she does a fabulous job on floodplain development review. She's one of the best in the state. She also has experience from prior work in reviewing habitat assessment plans. So if that is a route we want to take, the good news is that we may already have the resources or some of the resources in-house we need to do that peer review to issue a permit. So in better understanding what that process will look like, which is going to require more detail from FEMA, that is a process that might be a viable option for us to stay into compliance. One of my concerns with that process, though, is that it will cost out most development. That means, I mean, again, when you talk about development requires a permit, and development is any human-caused or man-made change, that means every single permit that comes through our office may require a habitat assessment. And that is a private consultant, and that could be very expensive for landowners to do. Public Works, ODOT, and others, because everyone is impacted by this. State agencies, other government entities are not exempt from these rules and regulations. A lot of them, for the work that they do, especially in water work, they are already required to get that type of a habitat assessment. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is talking to them and seeing, you know, what they're doing and looking at their habitat assessments to see if those could, you know, fall in line with what we're doing to keep those types of projects going as well. The third option is a prohibition on development in areas of special flood hazard. That means moving forward, we would not allow any development. And in my opinion, that's just not an option. So the letter was very brief on those three options. I will be spending time over the next couple of weeks to find out more information and details. And what I'd like to do is put a white paper together and come back to you to talk about each option and then get guidance on what path you think is appropriate for the county. I will be working with the cities on this. We do their building permit program. We issue all the building permits, trade permits for the cities, with the exception of Manzanita, which actually doesn't have any map flood in their city. So they don't have to worry about any of this, at least directly. Indirectly, there could be, you know, they're going to feel it too. But even things like trades permits, if you need a new electrical panel outside or box meter, whatever, if you have to trench and dig a new line, if you need a new septic system, your septic system fails, all of this is going to be tied to these regulations. So the other thing that will be stopped, FEMA will no longer be processing letters of map changes in Oregon. So sometimes when development occurs in areas of special flood hazard, changes are required to be made to FEMA maps. So the Southern Flow Corridor, we went through some map changes once that project was completed because there was enough work done to look at changing some of the hydrology in the area. There were significant cuts and fills, earth movement, etc. We went through that process when the project was completed. Probably one of the most visible projects to communities would be the fill that was placed across from Rosenberg's on the old Chevrolet property, right? There's that massive, you know, mound of dirt. What happens is that landowners sometimes want to create a pad like that. It could be a farmer who's trying to create a platform for cows to have refuge during a flood event. It could be businesses or landowners who are building a home who want to create a pad to actually build their house up and outside of those areas that flood, kind of create a little island. To date, there has been a process and a path forward to do that. And that's what the property, the old Chevrolet property, that's what they did. And there's two benefits to that. One, it allows you to build up and out of the floodplain. But with that map change process, it gives you an opportunity then to have that area mapped outside of an area of special flood hazard, which means you no longer have the regulatory strings attached and you don't have to pay flood insurance unless you want to, right? So there's a lot of benefits to doing that type of work. FEMA has stopped all of those processes. No map changes will continue to be reviewed. And it is in response to NMFS's preliminary implementation measure directive in that biological opinion because of the harm that extra fill could do to threatened species or endangered species. So there will be no more letter of map changes moving forward. So next steps. So this is what I am hoping to do in the coming weeks. I have sent all of you an outline of my next steps. As you can imagine, I feel like this is where my priorities now shift dramatically. There's some big decisions that we have to make, and I need to be able to provide as much information to you as I can in a very quick and short period of time. Coalition, we will be meeting Friday. I have a coalition meeting with Molly, our attorney, and the other board members, which include the Oregon Board of Realtors. It includes the president of the Special Districts Association, Oregon Home Builders Association, and others. It is possible that this letter may result in a conversation about now we have the ability to prove harm. Now that we are being required to move forward, as you know, we were part of that lawsuit in 2018. In my conversations with Molly, the attorney, I have asked her if she could be available to meet with the board. I don't know if it would be as an executive session or what we would want to do, but I'm trying to find a time that she has available. She's currently in Washington, D.C., and we are going to have that brief meeting on Friday. The other thing is I've reached out to the cities. Some of them may be listening to this meeting today. As I said, possible that we do permitting together. We are a partner in that. So I will be reporting and sharing information both with the cities and with you and what everyone plans to do moving forward. CACs had a lot of conversations. Commissioner Olson has been there. The good news is that the CACs have been prepared knowing this was coming. Again, the surprises, we didn't think it would be happening now. But going back and reporting to them, the ports and special districts, the SWCD, I've already reached out to the Creamery in the Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District. I'll be reaching out to contractors, surveyors, and I have a meeting set up with AOCPD, which is the Association of Oregon County Planning Directors. Many of us, 30 out of 36 counties, have received this letter with this same directive. And this is all embedded within our planning and land use programs. So that is where this all lies. I would like to create a web page with IS's assistance. I think it's time that we have a separate page on our website where we can start posting information for the public, because we are going to start getting a lot of calls and inquiries. And I would like a one contained space to start putting information together. Part of the coalition, we have hired a public information officer. Commissioner Bell is involved in those conversations. I think that will be a great place to start also sharing that information as it starts coming out as well. Mentioned that I would be evaluating those options and preparing a white paper to the board for recommendations for action. I've also reached out to our partners at DLCD and asked for also a Department of Justice determination. Any change, including these options, with the exception of a moratorium, will require changes, text amendments to our land use ordinance, which is an extensive set of public hearings, potentially Measure 56 notices, etc. The last time I did a change for our flood program, which was the MAP adoption in 2018, it was almost 8,000 notices that went out to landowners to advise them of these hearings. Quite frankly, I'm concerned we do not have the time. I did not budget this work. It has to be done. Because this is mandated under the circumstances through FEMA, I'm going to see if there is a way to do the work and inform communities without having to go through those expensive and time-consuming processes. Because if our target date is December 1st for compliance, we do not have a lot of time. And then with that is just, this is going to change all of our permitting processes. And we thought we had more time to do so. But the other thing I need to start thinking about is how that's going to change how we permit. And it will be everything. It will be building permits, it will be planning, it will be sanitation, because of that definition of development. So evaluation of how that's going to change, what we need to do, how our department needs to shift and pivot through all of this. One thing we are starting to do now is requiring a pre-application meeting for anything that requires a floodplain development permit. anticipating that this may be coming. We caught wind that FEMA may be making this announcement about a week and a half ago. We have already started reaching out to customers who have pending permits because they are missing pieces for their floodplain development permit and asking them to get that information to us immediately, because it is possible we may not be able to issue a permit after December 1st. I don't know. My hope is that we don't have to go that route, but we are trying to get everybody permitted right now that we can. And then just continue to work with the cities. So with that, just a couple of final comments. Changes are coming really fast, and we are still waiting for information. I'll do the very best I can over the next coming weeks to get as much information to share with you as I can, so that we're all able to make the best decision and plan a course of action. I am committed to bringing Tillamook County through this process. We will be sharing information as fast as it's received, working to get permits out the door. And the last thing is I would ask the public to please be patient with us. It is summer. This is our busiest time of the year. We have more permits in our queue now than ever. The calls, the real estate, everything. This is coming at the worst possible time, and we are absolutely going to do our best to continue to work with and serve everyone as timely as possible. So, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. This is just dreadful news and not entirely unexpected, but as we said earlier, the timeline is unexpected. It feels like this is something that's been looming. You know, we've known it was coming, but it's been just off the horizon or at the horizon line, and suddenly it's here. You know, so here we go. And we thought we had more time, but we don't. So I have some comments, but I'll invite my fellow commissioners to go first.
Yeah, I mean, this has been out there for a long time, and we now have this huge urgency, short timeline, and we still don't have the information. I mean, I think that's the other piece of this, right, is that we're being told we have to do this. It must be done by December 1st of 24. We have to tell them how we will move forward, and then we have to be ready to do so, it sounds like, by January 1st of 25, but we still don't know what it really means. I mean, in terms of information, correct me if I'm missing something, but it feels as if the information that we had at the public meeting, that when we had these conversations before we went into cooperating agency status, that what we knew at that time was that any human-caused development would be any human-caused action, and that's still all we know.
That's right.
There is still nothing more specific, so we're going to have to assume worst-case scenario of that decision, because they're not giving us anything better than worst-case scenario of that decision, and we have to move forward.
That's right.
So, you know, it's one of those pieces that just seems unreal. It seems like FEMA cannot possibly force us into this situation, and yet they have. So I don't think I have more questions at this point. I think it is, as Commissioner Bell said, it's just really infuriating and unfortunate situation, and here we are. I think we will have to look at what we do to support your department as we go through this process, because I don't think we can expect the same people to add another full-time set of work across the top of what they're doing unless we are expecting and willing to see regular work slow or suspend. And I don't think that's something we ever want to do. We know that for our builders and our property owners and everyone who is in this process of getting a permit, getting something constructed, et cetera, that we work really hard to stay within a 2 to 4 week turnaround, which is not a requirement, if I'm not mistaken. That's our personal goal, and I don't think we want to change that because our community is used to it. But we do, as an organization, have to consider how we will do this. What is the realistic approach for the staff that are that have to do this work to be able to do this work? You know, we have some tough choices ahead of us, some problem solving ahead of us about how we will meet all the requirements and what that will mean for service to our community overall. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the information. Thanks for the information, Sarah. Tongue in cheek. tongue in cheek. We appreciate all that you do because we know you've been in the center of this as well, trying to bring a positive impact to something that is being driven by federal agencies. And I think it's very similar to what we're feeling about the Habitat Conservation Plan. Once again, something that's driven by agencies outside of our jurisdiction. We don't have control, and we are being handed something that is that's not easy to implement in our community. And just being told, too bad, go for it. You have to do it anyway. So I appreciate the stress that puts on you and your team, and that feeling of, seriously, been working this for years, giving you information, telling you how bad it's going to be, and you're really going to ignore us.
Yeah.
And yet that is how it feels. So thank you for what you've done, Sarah. We know you've worked really hard on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. Yeah, this is not the best news you've brought to us in quite some time, that I'm aware of anyway. So as I understand it, they're going to have some informational sessions just between now and Labor Day, essentially. Meaning when everybody's on vacation, they're going to try and get us up to speed.
Pretty much.
Yep,
Right.
okay. And then the three options. So let me ask you just an operational question or two. Do you have, besides you, anyone in your office who is really up to speed with a lot of this stuff?
In my office, so I have kept my staff apprised of everything. We had a staff meeting this morning. They knew I was coming today. Everything I've shared with you, we have talked about, because we are going to start getting calls, and we are talking now about how we are going to balance that with our workloads, right? Because we're working really hard to keep our timelines. We do not want our timelines compromised by this. In terms of the regulatory framework changes, yes. And I would say Melissa, as the other certified floodplain manager, is instrumental and key to the success of implementation and regulations moving forward. Again, thinking we had more time, one of the things that I have thought about is, as we prepare for implementation, will her role in the department change? Meaning she does a wide variety of land use permit reviews. This may put her in a position to where her sole focus is now these permitting reviews and coordinating with other local and state agencies.
That's kind of where I was going. If you had someone besides you who was up to speed or at the 80% level or something like that, what if you took that person and said, okay, for the next 6 months, your life is going to be wrapped around this thing?
We've
And
already started that.
But to backfill, what if we were able to somehow fund a temporary person who could come in and at least backfill some of what that other person would be doing? In other words, you'd go up by one FTE with one almost 100% on this to get us to the first of the year. So, and I don't know, I'm just throwing that out as a conversation, but it's a tremendous impact on your office, not to mention what people will say and what needs to be done. But I can see communication issues, compliance issues, education issues, all of that. And if you spread that around, then you've got a lot of people at the 60 or 70 or 80% level and nobody at the 100% level. So I'm just thinking, would that make sense if somehow we scratched up money to bring somebody in for 6 months to backfill?
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. Planning on the coast is challenging, and it's not easy to do. There are a couple of consulting firms that might be able to help us. These are firms that I have worked with indirectly that are working with some of the cities to do that 6 month kind of that Band-Aid to figure out so we can keep land use reviews going while Melissa and I shift our focus to all of this. That is going to be part of a proposal that I will be bringing to you in the coming weeks. I'd like to better understand what exactly are we going to be required to do and what are the preparation steps we are going to have to take. But I really appreciate that acknowledgement, because I just think, I've thought about this getting ready for future budget hearings and proceedings, knowing that the day may come, we may have to ask for more staff just simply because our work is changing dramatically and it is becoming even more complicated, which means It's more time. But again, I thought I had more time. So this is all something that, yes, we're going to have to discuss if the decision is to try to keep permitting review timelines down to the quickest possible. Because to Commissioner Scar's point, we are not in violation of any state law when it comes to issuing decisions. We are timely, and in fact, we are ahead of those timelines consistently. We set our own standard and try to meet that, but this will change that.
And for those who are used to working with our planning department, it's going to create a significant amount of heartburn
Yep.
if we're not able to keep up. And the use of contract planners in and of itself is still going to create heartburn. So I think when we talk about the need for the county to be able to communicate clearly out to the public, in this case, out to our stakeholders, which are our builders and contractors and property owners, we also have to think about that, because this is going to be a huge change that's going to really be hard for people to understand, and very, very, both costly and frustrating for builders and property and homeowners.
They
'Cause
will no
time is
longer-
money.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they are no longer going, I mean, the biggest change I see in this landscape is that a homeowner and a contractor will not be able to complete permitting processes on their own anymore in these areas. It is all going to require engineering, habitat assessments, hydrologic studies. We're looking at engineering for stormwater management. And again, we knew all of this was coming. We've been working on trying to prepare people. I've spent a lot of time talking to communities and stakeholders. But the acceleration of this now, I don't know how. I have to figure out how we can get people through a permitting process and how we can do that with the least impact to cost and resources, because, some of the over-the-counter permits, some of a homeowner being able to come in and us being able to help them at the counter to complete those missing pieces and get an application submitted. In these areas, those days, in my opinion, are going to be gone.
Every one of those has a dollar sign on it.
That's right. And then comes with people just doing construction work anyway, right? Because that's what happens when it gets too hard. The other piece of this is, how do we stay in compliance with FEMA when those scenarios start coming?
You said one of the three options is really not acceptable. You really want, there's only two.
I don't want to see a prohibition or a moratorium. And by default, even the model ordinance or some of these other measures may indirectly result in that anyway. If development becomes too hard, people aren't going to do it.
Bill?
I just see that almost as the functional equivalent. They're all basically functionally the same thing, that there's not going to be development in the special flood hazard zones. And what's going to happen, and it's going to require more work for Sarah and me and everybody else, is people are going to go, well, you're crazy. I'm not going to go through all this to do something with my septic tank. Just going to go do it anyway. So anyway, that's going to be a nightmare too.
And people will consider it a taking of their property.
Yeah.
And they may be able to file that against us when we're going through those ordinance amendments processes. So that's the other thing, is where does this put us in that realm, which is, again, consulting with council, Molly, and others. That's a conversation. That's part of the information to bring to you in a couple of weeks.
Right, yeah.
Well, I agree with my fellow commissioners that we need to take a look at workloads and staffing in your department. But unfortunately, you don't even have enough information yet to know what the impact is fully. So that's aggravating, because it's hard to even plan for it at the last minute.
Right.
And additionally, of course, we're in the middle of budgeting talks about our reduced revenues. But I don't, Doug just used the term scratch up some money. I think we have to prioritize the services we're providing. And we all understand that construction is an economic driver. It's a powerful, important economic driver in our community. And the county operates on property taxes. So we don't want to slow construction. And not only that, but, you know, there's several balls happening. You have to figure out all this planning and change ordinances, and we need to take care of people who are in the building process right now.
That's right.
And we want to, I personally, I'm not speaking for you, but personally, I hope that people who have plans are able to get their permits before 2025 now, so that they can move forward and do the work before the rules change.
We've already
So-
started calling.
Great, because, so that means not only are we trying to take care of people who need permits in a timely way, we're trying to take care of more people
We're adding.
who need permits urgently before the end of the year.
Correct.
So that's a mess, and I think we'll have to figure out how to staff for it. We'll have to, because we can't, if the process becomes too elongated, it'll be next year, and it'll be too late for a lot of projects.
And it may be that, so you're absolutely right. And some of the questions that I have, so typically in land use, if you submit an application, even if it's incomplete, if you submit an application before the new rules go into effect, you fall under the old rules. So even if we don't get the decision issued by January 1, 2025, as long as we're not looking at a moratorium, I would like confirmation from FEMA that I can honor and issue permits for all of those applications that were received prior to that date.
Good.
Where it gets dicey is if it is an incomplete application, how do we get them complete and do so within the statutory timeline to deem it complete to issue the permit? So that is why having pre-application meetings with folks to talk about this, our surveyors, we have all got to be at the top of our game to get good information to our office and get those reviewed and those permits issued. It can't be like we will not be able to carry those incomplete permits or applications. Folks, our consulting teams, our stakeholders, our contractors, they're going to absolutely have to help us get us the information we need so we can get those permits out, or else it just will not happen.
Right, yeah, excellent point. I'm thinking about, listening to you today, I'm thinking about just some of the potential impacts. And I looked up at the screen to make sure that our new Parks Director, Dan Kais, is on this meeting.
has
And he
mapped
is, and
flood
you
areas.
don't have to check in, Dan, I see that you're there. Because, for example, one easy example is the entrance to Barview Jetty is woefully inadequate, has been for years, that work has been postponed for years because of the jetty repair work, et cetera. And when this happens, that it may make that work, the updating that jetty, the campground entrance, difficult to impossible. So I expect you'll be hearing from Dan right away to do one of the meetings that you just talked about. And and some other things that are like mind-boggling impacts are dredging, for example. Because FEMA is considering dredging a development project or
That's right.
activity. You know, how, like, all of the implications of that for fisheries are vast, are stunning. And, I was thinking about Kingfisher Apartments. Kingfisher Apartments may not have been possible to build there by next year. So thank God they built. But what about other projects that are, we just heard from Kevin that it's taken 6 years to get to this point. What about other projects that are out there percolating and people are putting the pieces together that may become impossible? And I was horrified to hear you mention cow evacuation structures as a displacement of land that reduces the zero net, whatever you said, zero net loss, thank you. Because I've read about those, that we didn't have those in 96, and hundreds, maybe thousands of cows died in the 96 flood, and thereafter, farmers built cow evacuation structures, so there's some high land for their cows to get to in terrible floods. So, all of the ways that this will negatively impact Tillamook County residents and property owners are staggering, and it's just very disappointing that we're at this point now. So thank you for your work, and we're all in it now,
Sure.
it's important work, and this is the work ahead. So
Thank you.
So thank you for everything that you're doing and will continue to do. And we'll probably just have to be meeting regularly on this subject.
Yes, and that was the other thing, is whether it's a board briefing or some sort of a standing update at the 9 o'clock meetings. As soon as I know of something, I will be sure to share. I will be coming next week with an out-of-state travel request for Melissa and I. We have to maintain certifications from FEMA to do the work that we do. And the annual conference where we get our certification credits to renew our licenses is happening in September. It's in Wasco, Washington this year, just the Northma conference is just right outside of Oregon. But you know, the other thing that I would say is, you know, being actively engaged in this, I sit, again, as a board member for the Coalition for Oregonians for Floodplain Protection. Melissa is on the board for our Northern Region Floodplain Managers Association, which is Alaska, Idaho, Washington, Oregon. So we are as embedded as we can, as much as we can be in every area of this topic in this matter, because we want to make sure Tillamook County has a voice everywhere we can find one to share our thoughts.
Thank you. I would like the updates to continue at this meeting.
Okay.
Because it's easier for the public to check in, to watch it live streamed or to watch the recordings, et cetera, than it is for the board briefing. And this just has broad implications for the community.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else for Sarah?
No, I just think we're in a crack and a hard place here. I don't see a good solution other than to do what the feds, and well, I think what the county can do is we can maybe get you some help or adjust hours and work schedule and who does what in your department. You do it, of course, but, you know, provide some funding or something where you can have one person focus so we don't miss a deadline, so we communicate, so people know what's happening. And those who have something on the back burner, like you say, maybe they can step up in advance and get in the queue and at least salvage some of this, because, you know, the feds are gonna do what they're gonna do, and I don't see any way of changing all this from my understanding. So, you know, we do what we can to salvage what we can and roll forward and plan for the best. Maybe plan for the worst and hope for the best, I guess I should say.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Sarah.
thank you, appreciate it.
All right. Moving on to item 14, consideration of an order in the matter of
We
relinquishing.
skipped 13.
That was, oh, sorry. I was confused. Item 13, rather, discussion concerning a countywide classification study proposal. Do we have Jody Wilson with us? Yes, we do. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Are
Jody.
we ready?
You bet.
That was, thank you, Sarah, for such an in-depth report, and that was a lot. If the board needs to take a breath before we jump into this other topic, I fully understand.
Thank you for your offer, but I think we're ready to go.
Trucking on.
Oh, so on April 3rd, in a board briefing, we talked about conceptually a classification study to basically do a job evaluation of all county jobs. Since 2018, our work has significantly changed. We're finding that many departments, what they have to do to comply or to run their programs looks a lot different than what it did. And when we did the market study, we found quite a bit of old language, or if we go to post a new job, the information is outdated. And so the classification study is basically a job analysis function where we would be going through and asking employees to complete a job analysis form. That information would be compiled and reviewed and then analyzed. And when we analyze that, we're going to look to see if their job has changed over time, if maybe these common classifications need to be split off. You know, most common, I think we all have an office specialist too, but they show up very differently in departments. You know, some of them could be very general and they could still meet that common use. Some of them may have customized over time. and may need their own classification because the work in that department looks very different. It is still clerical work and it could be general administrative work, but the how and the what may look very different. And so this project is to review, analyze, and update those job classifications. So the next time we go out to do a market study, we have the most current information. There are some departments. So when we originally talked about this conceptually in April, there was some curiosity around, what other vendors might cost, is the recommended vendor of Troop the most appropriate? So the staff report did include some alternate proposals. And we also went back to Troop and tried to analyze their cost. And there's two ways we found to reduce the cost slightly. Originally, it was coming in just under $50,000. Is we looked at our part-time classifications. Often our part-time classifications are a mirror image of our full-time classifications. So there was not a need to do a job analysis for those mirrored positions that might appear on both the full-time and the part-time pay plans. And then there was a discussion in some positions where we may have a lot of employees in a single classification, such as a corrections deputy or a patrol deputy, where we're not reviewing each particular one, but rather having the department work together on just making sure that's updated. Sometimes it is a lot of extra lift when that work is very prescribed. So we looked at trying to consolidate overall costs when possible. The other analysis is when we get ready to kick off this position, there are some positions on the pay plan that have been there for a long time. We have not been using them. They've been vacant for a long period of time. So doing the analysis with the department, if it would be okay to archive some of those positions. And we did that with some recent AFSCME market study classifications that we just haven't been using for a while. And it would just be a broader review of those that will we be filling it or is it no longer used? Any questions so far?
No, please continue.
We brought this forward as a proposal, not as a contract, because of the curiosity and additional information when we originally started discussing this. And so today I would like to request the board to review this to see if there is sufficient information for us to move forward with the contract with Troop. The two other vendors that we looked at, and we're finding as you go from vendor to vendor, there is a different style or a different way each organization will factor or review. We have worked with Troop in the past. They did our pay equity analysis. So we currently have all of our jobs factored for pay equity, and we currently have that tool available to us. So if we were to go to another vendor to do this work, we would have to adopt either their factoring or refactor all of them using the Troop analysis tool if that's what we're using in the future. So there is some additional efficiencies by using the same vendor to do this work as well. And Troop, as we are a current client, held space for us in this contract. One of the vendors couldn't start until November just because of how busy they were.
Do you have anything else? Commissioner?
No, I was just wondering if there were any questions or concerns for the board that I could answer.
Thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions?
So I've had the opportunity to look through it. I think that that I would recommend that we go forward with a Troop contract. Looking at the other two, the costs were not significantly different. In fact, one of them was higher and one of them obviously, both of them were higher and one of them was not available until November. I think that the reclassification work is a key piece to getting us through this employee work, which we've talked about in the past. So I appreciate the indulging our curiosities as to what other vendors might cost, and it seems that this is a reasonable proposal with an existing vendor. So
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. I would agree that this needs to be done as well, and that sounds like the right firm, but and I'll ask a question, but it's sort of rhetorical because sometimes you do this type thing. There are two parts, as I see. There's one is compensation and another is the job itself, job classification. And maybe we should have done the classification prior to the other side of it, which we've already done. But that's irrelevant because it's gone the other way. But then the flip side of that is when you go out to comparables, you don't know how current their actual job classifications are. You're looking at titles. And so it becomes somewhat academic, which is first. But anyway, now that we've adjusted some salaries and wages based on the market as we define it, the second part of that is to say, okay, are you doing now what was put on a piece of paper that you did, 6 or 8 years ago? And the answer is in probably a number of cases, no. Things have evolved. Now, like we talked earlier today, somebody's going to become an expert around here in artificial intelligence, whether we like it or not, and maybe that's something that we'll start doing. And so I see this as something that needs to be done periodically, maybe every 4 to 6, 7 years, maybe more frequently, I don't know. But I think if we don't do it, we've left hanging the second half of reclassification and what people do. So and it won't be perfect, but let's find out what people do and what they do differently or what they don't do at all. And I think that will help us maybe even as we roll through some of our budget issues. Now, this may take some time. I don't know what are the timelines, Jody, on this? How long would it take?
We're looking at about 16 to 18 weeks, depending on how quickly we can get departments to review the classifications. So the steps are, the employee's going to complete a job evaluation after a project kickoff. And then the department and the supervisor gets to review what the employees included. So there is a series of checks and balances. Much of this is electronic. But I want to quote Commissioner Scar on a couple of previous presentations. If you've seen one county, you've seen one county. Each county is very unique in how they use their jobs. And so when we do market these jobs, sometimes it's not actually title for title, it's minimum qualifications and job functions. So sometimes there's a job title that looks different in another jurisdiction, and that's the distinction that this work does. So long story short, 16 to 18 weeks.
Well, and that's doable. I would consider that medium term. Obviously can't do it in 4 weeks, but I was hoping you wouldn't say that it would drag out 18 months or 2 years, that it's something that could be done on the medium, within the fiscal year for sure. And then I think that's the second half of what we're doing, and then you fashion a way forward based on that, understanding that it will evolve too. So I think we need to do it, and we've made a commitment to our staff and to the whole organization that you're going to be paid fairly at market rates. Now let's find out exactly what you do, and if that needs adjustment, we'll do that too. Because the 300 people who work here, if they're not treated fairly, compensated fairly, and doing what it is they're doing, and you can't know that till you find out, then the organization is going to falter. It won't fail because the county will away. It just won't do what it's supposed to do, in my opinion only. 33 1/3%.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jody. I appreciate your work. I appreciate you getting proposals from other companies because, as you said, in April, I asked, is this a reasonable price for this work? Is this the going rate for this work? Because it still seems like a lot, but now I realize that it is the going rate based on these other proposals. I hope that, and this may or may not be realistic, but what I hope is that when we're up to date on these job descriptions, that we will be able to keep them up to date within the departments. Now, several years ago, maybe 5, several years ago, we went through a process where a previous HR director asked the department heads to update their job descriptions. And I think some of them did and some didn't. And I don't know if that project just fell apart when that director left. I don't know what happened there. But my hope is that by investing in this now, we'll get all of the job descriptions across the county up to date, and then we can institute a process where we keep them up to date, where we review them annually or review them every other year or review them when the job changes. However we need to do it to just keep it up to date, because it seems like it just seems like a lot of money to have to invest still in order to update job descriptions, and we have to get the work done. So I totally agree with that, and I hope we can do it ourselves in the future. So and also my question to you is, you had said when you started talking today about we were asking Troop if they could do fewer, and that the price, there might be a price difference. So can you speak to that? Because the price looks close to what it was in April. Am I wrong?
So we reduced the number of classifications. It came in at 49,000 originally, and we removed those part-time classifications that was a duplicate. There was about 30 of them. So that's how we got to the low 40s, is the analysis and the job evaluations on those would not be required. Because if you just count up each pay plan and how many job classifications, that's how we originally looked at that, versus saying how many of these are active job classifications.
Okay.
So it did not reduce it significantly. We do still have close to 140 unique job classifications throughout the county.
Okay. All right. So thank you. Then I think we'll ask you to put this on a future board agenda for consideration.
I'll work on a contract and bring that forward next meeting if there is time on the agenda. And I thank the board for their time today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Okay. Now we'll move on to item 14, consideration of an order in the matter of relinquishing any revisionary interest in the Cape Mears Community Association property. Bill Sargent.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Statute provides that a county can convey to a nonprofit organization some property as long as that property is going to be used for open space, parks, or natural areas for perpetual public use. In 2007, your predecessors executed a deed conveying some property above Cape Mears somewhere, I'm not sure exactly where, pursuant to that statute, because I think Cape Mears, the community association at the time, had this vision of making it, a pristine area. I don't know if at the time they had the vision of it being ultimately conveyed to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a national refuge, but be that as it may, they conveyed the property. Well, fast forward now 17 years, the community associations engaged in a process in escrow, I think, of conveying the property so that it can become part of the wildlife refuge. But as part of the title work involved with that, they said that deed back in the day didn't have a reversionary interest in it, and out of concern that that might have some negative effect on the title, they asked us through, the Cape Mears Community Association, through their counsel, Michael Cattell, asked us to find that we find it in the public benefit not to have that reversionary clause, and that's what this order before you does. It just clears a title issue that came up during escrow. I see that Rich Deitman is online. He is an attorney that's involved, I think, with one of the players, and I'm not sure if he wants to talk about it, but he could maybe fill you in a little bit more fully if you wanted to.
Thank you. Mr. Dykman, would you like to join us?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, I apologize. I'm only on my phone, so you can't see me. But my name's Rich Deichman. I'm an attorney for a nonprofit organization called the Conservation Fund, and we're a national nonprofit. And our role in this transaction is actually essentially to be a bridge buyer and hold the property. So we're going to purchase the property from the Cape Meares Community Association with the intent of selling the property to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service for inclusion in the Cape Meares Refuge. And as part of that transaction, it was all just accurately described, but one aspect of any federal land acquisition is the preparation of a title opinion by a federal attorney. And the United States won't accept properties that have any reversionary interest. So that's why we are trying to go back and take care of this issue to avoid any issue getting this property to the Fish and Wildlife Service. So we appreciate your attention to this. My understanding is that the county actually only held this property for a couple months. And the main reason the county took title to the property at all was essentially the timber company who owned the property wanted to give it to the Cape Meares Community Association. But at the time, I don't believe the community association was a 501c3 or whatever was required in order for there to be a tax benefit of the donation of land. So the county, graciously stepped in and took title briefly and then passed it on to Cape Meares Community Association. So we really appreciate your attention to this. We are trying to close before the end of this month. So really, again, appreciate getting it on calendar, and I'm available if there are questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Deichman?
No, I don't think so. I wasn't aware that a reversionary clause in favor of the government couldn't go in because it's one government to another in the long run. But so the only other question for one of you is, do we convey on a statutory warranty deed or bargain sale, or how is that typically? What's the form? Just out of curiosity.
Doug, I don't think, it's already been conveyed. We're just, by way of this order, we're just saying we're waiving. We
So
find
we'll take it out of whatever's on record now.
Yes.
Okay. All right, no, I'm good. It's going to a good cause and not gonna put a landfill on it or anything, so. Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, no,
Commissioner?
I'm in support. Thank you. I know they've done a great deal of work at the Cape Meares Community Association, trying to ensure that the nature of the areas around their community remain natural, wild, and available for public. And this is a piece of that, and going to the we've been here too long. Going in to the federal government to be part of that preserve is a great thing. So I'm in support.
Likewise, as am I. I'm grateful to have something positive following Sarah's
Right.
dismal presentation. I feel like this is really a good thing for Tillamook County ultimately, and certainly for the Cape Meares community, and I'm happy that we can participate in this way.
Perfect.
Anything else, Bill?
No, not for me. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of Board Order Number 24-047 in the matter of relinquishing any revisionary interest in the Cape Meares Community Association property, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Deichman also. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 15, we have consideration of change order number 2 to contract number 6371, prevailing wage rate contract for construction with Saunders Company, Inc. for the Kiwanda Corridor Project, Cape Kiwanda Parking Lot and Restroom Project. Rachel Haggerty, Chief of Staff.
Hello, Commissioners.
Hello.
Before you today, I have a small change order for the Saunders contract for the implementation of the Kiwanda Corridor Project, Cape Kiwanda Parking Lot reconstruction. It has several items, some over, some under, with a net increase of $12,616 that we would be paying out of TLT. Most notably, we are removing the parking management system that would have live information of whether the parking lot's full or go park here. We decided to remove that quite some time ago when we originally got the bid, but this is capturing it on paper. So that's a sizable savings. There's a sign that was there that we were going to be updating, but we needed to move it during construction. We contemplated putting it back, but it was falling apart when it was removed, so we had to build a new structure. We've discussed, there was some issues with the survey, which led to a change in grading quantities, which had to be redone, so that's captured here. We're installing some new crossings going across Cape Kiwanda Drive and added some paving. So there's some other items in here as well, but those are the most noteworthy increases and decreases that comes to a net of a little over $12,000. It's ready for consideration.
Thank you. Commissioners, any
No
questions?
questions, thank you.
No, I drive by it all the time, and I'll be glad when they get the north side done, which I think is probably close, but I think that's been one of the better projects in the area, and looks good. Haven't been in the restroom there yet. Is it actually not open yet to go have a look? No, okay, thank you.
I'm supportive also, and it does look great driving by. It's really impressive. So thank you for your work on this to date. I think we're ready for motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of change order number 2 to contract number 6371, prevailing wage rate contract for construction with Saunders Company, Inc. for the Kiwanda Corridor Project, Cape Kiwanda Parking Lot and Restroom Project, I move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, item 16 is consideration of a professional services agreement with DLR Group Architecture and Engineering, Inc. for the BLM Building Design Services. Rachel Haggerty.
As you know, we have a fully executed purchase and sale agreement for the county to acquire the BLM property on 3rd Street to allow for the remodel of that building and subsequent relocation of the district attorney and circuit court operations to that building at a much later date. So right now we are moving swiftly through the due diligence pieces, one of which is hiring an architect, DLR, to do a feasibility and test fit, if you will, of if these back of the envelope calculations of moving these offices there will in fact work. So we have a lot of ideas, we think it's gonna work, but before we spend $3 million on a purchase, we wanna make sure from an architect's perspective that it can work. So before you today, we have the contract for DLR to do that work. It also includes a building inspection, so they'll be delivering that report to us. And it will only contemplate the one concept. So there's a lot of concepts that could be explored. If we acquire the property, we will pursue those when we do a competitive solicitation to hire an engineer and work more extensively with that engineer to develop concepts and hone in on the final preferred concept that we design and move forward with. But for this, we just want to make sure that one concept would work. So it's ready for your consideration, and this will be paid out of ARPA funds.
Thank you. Commissioners?
No, thank you. No questions. I'm familiar with DLR, although when I used to work with them, I'm sure they're all new people by now, but they're quite well known in the region, and I think this is a good first step and part of our due diligence. So yes.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Yeah, as do I. I'm excited to see their design, and it's important in this project just to make sure that the property and the building can meet our needs, the needs of a future court facility. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate their availability and the speed at which they will accomplish the task, because we have a time constraint. So thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of a professional services agreement with DLR Group Architecture and Engineering, Inc. for BLM Building Design Services, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Item 17 is consideration of amendment number 6 to grant agreement number 5012 with Tillamook Coast Visitors Association for destination management and communication services. Rachel Haggerty.
We are in year 6 of an 8-year agreement with Visit Tillamook Coast for destination management and communication services. This agreement serves as an umbrella agreement whereby each year, following the Budget Committee's recommendation and the adopted county budget, we allocate monies for operations and specific projects through amendments. So this year, Visit Tillamook Coast is receiving $2,217,060. Of that amount, $482,000 is going toward wayfinding projects throughout the county, and $100,000 will be allocated toward the Rural Food Systems Program. Additionally, they will be receiving $400,000 for the 24-25 Facilities Grant Program. And there's an amendment to the allocation for the 23-24 grant program, increasing it from $400,000 to $511,234,000. You made the decision for those awards several months ago, and we're just updating that in their agreement so we can transfer that amount to Visit Tillamook Coast. And those are the changes. Ready for your consideration.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Only question, does that complete the wayfinding? I'm thinking this was the last part of it. Or do they still have a little bit to go?
There's a mix, if I recall, there's a mix of the status of projects. So some are in the planning, some are in the implementation phase. So I would expect forthcoming wayfinding projects.
Okay.
It's implementing several of them and furthering several others, but I don't think it's all of them.
Okay, well, I know it was spread over several years, and they were doing different parts of the county, and I didn't know how close we are to the end.
I agree with Rachel. What I think I remember from those conversations is that there were a number of projects that had been postponed for a couple of years. So this completes the ones that were outstanding that had been promised for a couple of years. But also there were some that were in process currently. So it cleans up all the old ones that had been promised.
So there's still a little ways forward to go.
I think so. Commissioner?
No questions, thank you.
Well, I'm happy to sign this agreement. We've already made these decisions, and I just want to say that Tillamook Coast Visitors Association does an outstanding job, and truly they're a model for visitors associations for destination management in the state and otherwise. And I continue to hear compliments for Tillamook Coast Visitors Association from all over the place, from people saying, wow, you have a really great DMO. So we're grateful that we have them to work with.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of amendment number 6 to grant agreement number 5012 with Tillamook Coast Visitors Association for Destination Management Communication Services, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And item 18, consideration for transient lodging tax agreement number 2024-P-2 with the Salmonberry Trail Foundation for Salmonberry Trail Organizational Capacity Year 4. Rachel.
This is our annual allocation to the Salmonberry Trail Foundation for a variety of work that they're doing in furthering the trail. Their scope for the next year is delineated in the agreement. It describes their priorities with the Rockaway Connector, Tillamook Creamery Path, Wheeler Connector, as well as continuing to diversify funding and building organizational capacity. So it's ready for consideration, and they continue to keep moving along and making great strides.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Yeah, so just as a clarity, I sit on the board of the Salmonberry Trail Foundation, and they are doing excellent work. I'm really excited about the scope that we have in the contract for this year because under Caroline Fitchett, who has been here and presented to us, she's really been working on what, she calls the movement that is the Salmonberry Trail, and it's getting a lot of people involved. They have well over 1,000 people that have volunteered or attended events or signed up for the newsletter over the last year alone with the information that they've been putting out, the events they've been having, et cetera. They are doing regular walks on the trail to get people engaged. I mean, it really is moving forward in some significant ways. I think what's exciting about what I saw in the scope for the coming year is they've done a lot of that work on the east side because they have a piece of the trail on the east side where they've pulled the rail and the ties, and it's really easy to draw people from the Portland metro area to that east side where they can take a walk and they can see progress. But the goal in this year with this particular scope of work is to really do that same type of work on the ground in Tillamook County, to really be here. They've hired, I believe it's a part-time outreach person in Tillamook County. So if you go to the farmer's market over the next couple of months, you will see the outreach person at the farmer's market for the Salmonberry, and just engaging in different ways across our community. So really looking and saying, okay, now how do we take the energy of that movement that's happened on the Portland side of the hill and bring it to Tillamook County and get folks engaged? So really excited about where this is going.
Excellent. Commissioner?
No, I think that's a success story and keep it moving, and yes, I'm in support.
As am I. I'm hopeful that we will see this, or at least some chunk of it, while we are in office, or
Alive.
Alive.
or-
That's what Bill always says. He wants to be alive for it.
Yeah, while I'm still while I still have the ability to ride a bike. How about
There you
that?
go. There you
Yes,
go.
I want to ride a bike on that trail. Okay, I think we're ready.
Madam Chair, in consideration of transient lodging tax grant agreement number 2024-P-2 with the Salmonberry Trail Foundation for Salmonberry Trail Organizational Capacity Year 4, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you all. Board concerns, commissioners? Going, gone? This has been a long meeting. Seriously, if you have the opportunity right now, board concerns?
Nothing, thank you. Well, we do have a briefing this
We do.
afternoon, I believe. I do have a few items that I can update everybody then.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, well, we have a couple of announcements that I will refer people to the website, to the Board of Commissioners page for these announcements. And we do have a board briefing this afternoon at 2. And with that, this meeting is adjourned at 12:06 p.m. Thank you.
Sure, Richard.
Okay. All right.
Gonna keep having these long meetings, we're gonna need refreshments. or
We
something.
are. We
I
are.
was on the edge of calling for a bathroom break, but I was like, I think we can make it.